Off we go. So we're going to start the podcast now, the Unconventional Podcast. This is the Unconventional Podcast. Welcome to the Unconventional Podcast, Episode 4, and we're here with today's guest, Daniel. Daniel, welcome to the Unconventional Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's our honor to have Daniel on the Unconventional Podcast, really for many, many reasons, of which will all unfold throughout the podcast. But first and foremost, the podcast here, Daniel, covers a lot of different topics. So the topics include business, finance, the world of digital finance, and then we also like to cover mental health and wellness, and we like to cover really self-growth, self-help, and topics that we think I've always seen successful business people speak about. You know, when I was coming up in business, bumped into a bunch of people, and they were just coming from some retreats and some spaces where they were working on themselves in one way or another. You know, and I was just busy coming and running to the office, back to Manhattan, back to my thing, and you start recognizing and realizing that there are different modalities in which getting yourself healed and settling in with yourself and self-consciousness in a healthy way, and awareness and being present and being uncomfortable, those actually can translate into living successful business lives, and there's a connection between them. And that we found is unconventional. So Daniel owns and operates a really, really large Amazon e-commerce based business. There are many people interested in that topic in general in the world today. As business moves online and Internet of Things becomes smart as part of our lives, more and more people are trying to understand, like, how did people get into this business? How did they grow such businesses? What does it mean to be doing $100 million in revenue? What do these things mean? And how can people in the world learn about, hey, and have the confidence of, let me get into this as well, and this can work for me perhaps. And we want people to become educated about those kinds of businesses. That's A. B, there's also a lot to do with, like we said before, the connection between business growth, in this case e-commerce, and self-help. So we also know that, Daniel will share a lot about this, psychedelics. My interest in psychedelics is well known. Daniel's interest in psychedelics is more new, if we can say.
Yeah, you can consider myself to be a rookie in this field.
Perhaps, but once you're in the world, you're in the world. And what's super unique about this, and what I find very unique about this conversation specifically, is that just a month ago or so, Daniel and I were sitting in a meeting, and we had a psychedelic conversation, and Daniel will go through and explain what did Daniel say about psychedelics in the meeting 1 month ago or so, and today we're sitting here, and he's going to share his opinions on psychedelics and psychedelic therapy. So there's a lot of points to cover. I wanted to start the podcast really with getting to know a little bit about your background actually in sneakers. There are sneakerheads all over the world. You were a king of the sneaker business. There is so much interest in that space today. Can you give us some background on how you got into that business, and what did that do for your business growth and where you are today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, yeah, thank you again for having me here.
Of course, welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Daniel.
you. Definitely unconventional, because I didn't come prepared by any means. I'm a big fan of just raw and letting the energies and the vibes, flow. So I'm 34 years old, pretty young dude still. I began my journey in work. I began working and hustling probably since the age of 14 and a half, 15. Life threw me into different places. School, education was never really something that I found passion or enjoyment in. It's funny, I was driving my son actually to school today. I try to drive him once, twice a week, just to, have some nice conversations. And he's 12, and he's my oldest, and he reminds me so much about myself. And he's not going to school happy, and he's coming home and he's not happy, and he can't really pinpoint to why exactly he's not happy, but he tells me I wake up so early. The kid wakes up at 6:30 every morning, comes home after traffic at 5:30. He needs to go to sleep by around 9 o'clock, and he just feels like he's not enjoying it. He looks like he sometimes comes home, he's after a war zone, and I really feel bad. I feel bad on multiple levels. First, I feel bad because I dropped out of school completely when I was already 14, 15 years old. So obviously, I'm trying to be that father that's let me make sure my kids have a better life than I had.
So your story begins really with dropping out of school.
It begins before,
Your
but
business success begins with
yeah,
dropping out of school at
yeah.
14, 15.
So it begins with dropping out of school at 14, 15, but also not having both of my parents around. And my mother wasn't around at that time. My father was in prison at that time, unfortunately. At that time, both of my parents were divorced. So I was actually living by my father. He's the one who took custody of me and my two brothers after the divorce.
Let's slow the story down for a minute,
Sure.
just to because we're baking a nice cake here, and I want to make sure the ingredients, because there's obviously going to be a lot of inspiration that comes out of this podcast, a lot, and so let's bake in the right ingredients. So you grew up in a home that was perhaps, well, for sure, unconventional. We're on the Unconventional podcast.
Dysfunctional, they call it in the world
we're
of
gonna be more positive.
healing.
A very unconventional home you grew up in. You had parents that were divorced, and just setting the table here. And you dropped out of school, parents who were divorced, and a dad who was in prison.
Correct.
And
He was in prison overseas. So so at that point we were living in Israel. So we'll go a tiny bit back.
What age were you when you recognized the dysfunction in your home?
It's also a good question. I was texting my father this week. He reminded me a story. It took me time to remember it. But I would say probably already by the time I was 7, 8 years old, because unfortunately my father was actually in prison twice.
Hang on. Well, okay.
Yeah.
This is like a great
So
way to start the podcast.
Let me go back a bit.
How old were you when your dad first went to prison? And can we talk about
so I have
why
actually
he went to prison?
I have actually a good flow of my life story.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to give it like in a nutshell here. So
right.
Both of my parents
Then
are
I'll ask
Israelis.
questions.
They actually grew up in very Orthodox homes in Bnei Brak in Israel, which is a very religious city. They themselves came from dysfunctioning homes, meaning today I understand it more than ever before, which is fine. And both of my parents were sort of rebels towards what was happening in their own homes. They had, a lot of struggles and trauma and everything in between. So they kind of rebelled and were boyfriend-girlfriend before they got married, which was very unconventional in the city of Bnei Brak.
Unconventional.
Correct, yeah.
Whoa.
We're going to try to use
So
that word
I just
a lot.
wanted to poke in because people need to understand that, and if you're watching now, because you are, Google Bnei Brak, understand and really figure out what Bnei Brak is. For your parents to be boyfriend, girlfriend, this is what year is this?
Yeah. This is a good question. My father's 1960. I'm very bad with numbers, by the way. But we're talking about probably 1980. Pretty much,
Early.
maybe a tiny bit beforehand. Yeah, very early. So, they became boyfriend, girlfriend. I guess they were numbing their own pains by, being with each other. And they got married pretty young, and right after the wedding they decided at that era, I guess, to chase the American dream. So on a plane they go to Brooklyn, famous borough park, which translates somewhat to Bnei Brak in certain degrees.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of Hasidic
very insular,
people.
very exclusive, very religious.
Yeah, so I was actually born in Maimonides in Borough Park. To Israeli parents, immigrants who landed, didn't speak a word in English. And I grew up probably 2-3 years in Borough Park, and then my father bought a house in Staten Island, New York. Which,
It's not really part of New York, Staten Island, but people argue about this. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Staten Island.
People, when I was living in New York in the Five Towns, many times folks would tell me Staten Island, and they would sort of laugh. I never really understood it because actually Staten Island was probably the only place that I can remember from my childhood, at least for a few years, that I somewhat had a normal childhood.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, for me
it
means a bit
Staten
different.
Island's good for you. For other people it means garbage.
The beginning stages or at some point.
Nothing against Staten Island. I love it. It's a great place.
Yes, I was born in Brooklyn, raised there until I was 2-3, then in Staten Island from 3 to 10. I went to RJJ, I don't know if you're familiar. It was a nice school at the time, maybe it still exists. But my parents never really had a normal relationship, in the house growing up. So it was very well felt, like I said, probably from the age 7, 8, maybe even before, I just can't remember. But around 8 is when my life got devastated, for the first time, is when my father unfortunately went to prison for around a year and a half. And I wasn't told that he went to prison. I was actually told that he went to the army in Israel. And I don't blame my parents for telling me that story. That's probably the best for their ability at that time. They were trying, obviously, to protect me and my brothers, not to, suffer from
Right.
extra layers of trauma, not seeing your father for a year and a half, at least thinking that he's a hero in the army in
Right.
Israel, which the story made a lot of sense. Wonderful. The problem is, however, is at some point very quickly in my neighborhood, in synagogue, or even
Word
in
got
school,
around.
the world got around, and I started getting bullied by kids.
This is 8. You were 8
This is
years
8
old.
years old. Yeah, when
Very
I
tough
first
age to be getting
never,
bullied.
I didn't. I remember that I didn't want to go to synagogue again, even though my mother would push me and motivate me to go, because obviously she probably just wanted some quiet time for those
Right.
2 hours on a Saturday, and I would tell her I don't want to go, and I didn't even tell her why I didn't want to go, which is also quite fascinating, because that probably is when I began the process of is suppressing the proper word
Yep,
of saying.
that is suppressing
Yeah,
your
suppressing.
emotions at
So,
that time.
yeah, my friends call me a man with no first language, so there's going to be certain times where I'm going to ask you if I'm saying the word properly. It's just part of my life, and it's fine. I take full ownership on that. And the reason for that, obviously, is
You
I
want me
grew
to
up.
correct you while you're speaking
You
in
can,
real time?
if you feel that it's necessary, you
it's
can
not.
correct me.
It's
But
not. I mean, it's not necessary.
no problem
but
at
for your
all.
own
So,
education.
so I grew up, until the age of 10 in the U.S., and then by 10 we moved back to Israel, which we'll get to that in a second. So I come at 10 to Israel. I'm in an Israeli school, and I don't speak a word in Hebrew. I
Where
understand
in
a
Israel?
tiny bit.
You went back to Bnei Brak?
No, we went back to Yerushalayim, actually, to a neighborhood called Harnof in Jerusalem.
A lot of American
A lot of
Israelis.
Americans, yeah,
a
it
lot of
changed a
American
lot. Back
Israelis.
then, there were a lot of Americans. It did feel, a tiny bit good, but that's really where I began. But we moved to plenty of places. So,
Right.
I got bullied. I didn't want to go back, but I think that was the first time that today I understand, looking back on the concept and the idea of actually holding trauma inside, pain, and not having that one person, or maybe even more than one person, where you can feel like you can just, put your head on their shoulder and really, with no filters, share with them what you're going through, because those were really very, traumatic times for me, mainly due to the fact that the majority of the bullies were older than me also in age. So as much as I may have been big or wild, or I had maybe courage to fight back, I knew from the first second that this is a battle not worth me fighting, because they were just a few years older than me, and they
Right.
were, being very, very, intense as far as that goes. So my father gets released from prison. Life is life, nothing too crazy to share about. However, because my parents were both immigrants and they never became legal in the U.S., my father needed to get deported, because
Hopefully,
if you're
the immigration authorities are not watching the podcast. But
no, they can watch.
okay,
I'm a
good.
proud
I
U.S.
make
citizen,
sure.
and
Oh, good. Okay,
I
very
enjoy
good.
very much paying taxes, which I'll get to also in a second.
Making sure.
Yeah,
making
yeah.
sure.
So I was born here, so there's nothing that can be done as far
Anchor
as
baby.
that.
You're an anchor baby.
Yeah, I'm an
perhaps.
anchor. So
Yeah.
my father came back home. Probably a year or two passed by, and I guess he got a date where you need to leave. So I remember it was a summer of 1998, where me and my father left to Israel. My mother still stayed because my other brother was in sleepaway camp, and my mother, I guess, wanted to sell the house and prepare and pack and whatnot, and my father was more under the gun timing wise. So I was that kid that got elected to go with my father now to Israel. And I remember that there was this guy who came to our house, and he was with us until we actually entered the aircraft. Only several years later, I started connecting the dots, and I understood that it was a federal agent,
Oh,
I guess
man.
as part of the
And you were
process
being
then,
escorted.
making sure that, you're escorted properly,
Out
out
of
of
the
the country.
my
Yeah,
friend.
yeah. So summer
So
1998,
you were on that trip?
I was on that trip. It was me and my father solo.
Very traumatic.
But it was traumatic. Then I didn't know. I thought it was just a friend of my father who was so close to him. He wanted
Your
to be
parents
with him.
are really, really creative.
Very creative.
very,
yeah,
very
thank God.
creative.
So we landed in Israel. I have, bonding time to spend with my father. I knew I had a good 2 months until my mother and my two other brothers would arrive. So I was, traveling
Why
a
were
lot
they
in
able
Israel.
to? Why did only you go with Bob, your
Because
dad's
my older
friend?
brother was in sleepaway camp.
Got it.
I didn't want to go at that age. I was more, I guess, attached to home. And my younger brother, I guess, needed my mother more than my father.
But
so
why did they send one child ahead? What was the?
Oh no, I wasn't deported. I just went together with my father.
But the whole family was going. You just
correct,
weren't told.
meaning my mother wasn't
You
forced
said,
to
hey,
go.
take a trip with Dad to Israel.
Yeah, exactly. So my mother
Very
and us at that point weren't forced to leave. My mother didn't commit a crime, even
Right.
though maybe she wasn't
Are
legalized.
we allowed to talk about the crime or no?
Are we gonna talk
It's not
about?
important if it's not important.
No, it's not important.
Super
Meaning we
cool.
can talk about the second one. I think it's more important.
Okay.
So
Very mysterious.
Yeah, yeah. So we can talk about it. I don't know.
No pressure.
Yeah, no problem.
Just,
So
it's just unconventional. So
So basically,
James.
l'chaim, cheers.
L'chaim. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for
It's
having
really
me.
good. People don't realize I know Daniel for many multiples of years, going back at least since I moved to Long Island.
Nassau County, yeah.
Yeah, so that's over 7 years ago, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Getting close to 8. That's a long enough time that we can have l'chaims,
Yeah.
drink
yeah.
some wine on a Thursday, and just have some really important conversations that
Absolutely.
I think people, I know people will benefit from. I'm very confident.
Okay,
Anyways,
good. Yeah,
getting back to the flow.
So we land in Israel, 1998. Nice summer, chilling with my father, looking at different neighborhoods where we're going to live, where we're going to establish, our new home and whatnot. My mother and my brothers arrived towards the end of the summer. We ended up living, our first location was a small suburb, literally probably 3 to 5 miles outside of Jerusalem. It's called Mevaseret Zion. I don't know if you heard of it, but when you're driving on highway number 1, which is the main connector to Jerusalem, right after Telstone, it's on the left side, also on top of a hill. Very
Noted.
modern, orthodox, and many, I would say the majority is not a religious community, but it was very interesting. The differences, and I went to school there, and the type of kids and all of that stuff. Within a few months after my mother, and my brothers joined, my parents got divorced, and it was pretty natural to us that we're going to live with my father. My mother at that time was going through a lot of mental health issues, emotional stuff, and she wasn't capable to do what most mothers would do, and she just felt that it's not something that we as our kids would benefit. So my father, without even thinking twice, took us in. However, the problem was that my father was barely around, not because he didn't love us, which he did tremendously, but it was more because he had a lot of financial difficulties, and he was trying to figure things out, and he was just working unconventional hours. So I think already from that age, at the age of 10, 11, is number one when I started feeling, today understanding more in depth what those feelings mean, but understanding that I don't really have structure around me, and that I have a lot of flexibility to do whatever I want, what I want, without really having too many eyeballs around me.
Uh-huh.
That was probably one of my most difficult moments in my life. Not at that time. At that time I felt like I'm in summer camp. However, reflecting, looking back down memory lane at all the major events that occurred in, multiple areas in my life, I think that's really what led to those. But you know what, today I'm sitting here and I'm very happy, and it's, we're
Right.
all on a journey, and it's fine and it's wonderful. But probably that's also the age and time when I started understanding in depth the concept. In Hebrew there's a famous saying, Im eina nili mili. Maybe you can translate it to proper English, but if I'm not going to take care of myself,
Who then?
Who the hell is going to take
Well,
care
it
of me?
doesn't say who. Yeah, it says who then.
Correct, who
But
then?
you can say yeah.
Yeah.
We try not to swear on the podcast.
Yeah.
Just so
And-
you know.
and that
it's
was-
not, it's just a thing. It's a thing.
And from
There's
that
course,
point
yeah.
until today, that lit up a driving force in my body, which at certain times and periods, obviously everything needs to be in proper balance, but the majority of my life the balance definitely wasn't proper. But that really got me into my journey of starting, entering the business world and doing things on my own. So from 10 to 15, in a nutshell, I was probably in 7, 8 different schools,
Nice.
just from 10 to 15. By 15, I completely dropped out. At that point, my father was in prison for the second time in Germany, actually.
Okay, we have to break that down at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah,
Nobody
we will.
goes. They say that I think they say who's they? I'm not sure who they is, but they say that people who go to prison once go to prison twice.
Unfortunately, yes.
And I sort of, this is a public story, so I can say it, but I had a friend who, yeah, he was, he wasn't doing something very smart in business. No longer a friend. So, yeah, this was about 15 years ago. Um, and he got in trouble, and everybody cut him off, bam. Guy gets in trouble, out. Nobody wants to have anything to do with the guy who just got in trouble, right? It's dangerous. And what do you know? Like, while this guy was on probation and going through his court stuff, and it was like this public story, he did something else. Bibbity bop. He just did something else. Got in trouble again. And then when you read about it, yeah, people who do this once, they'll do it twice. So does one have to do with another with your dad, or can you enlighten us?
Yeah, I think that both came from the same idea of not having proper education,
Right.
not
Right.
growing up in a normal functioning home where we are taught, the basic fundamental rules of life. And then
Right.
of course adding a lot of emotion where my parents, speaking in their belief system as I feel was the case, we want something much better for our kids because what we had was horrible. So let us really make up for it
Right.
and give them what we never had. And finance can be a driving force, and when things are not working your way, I guess very quickly you can get tempted and you can do things that are problematic, and if you have bad luck then you also can get locked up.
Meaning they didn't have structure growing up, and therefore felt boundaries maybe there were
Correct.
none. They didn't understand.
And I can very much relate to it because I'm a miracle that I'm actually sitting here today and I'm alive, because what I went through, in my childhood, and the
Right.
amount of neglect and moving around and having the freedom of choice and being in places and wrong
Right.
places and making tremendous amounts of mistakes, I just, thank God that he was on my side in these very critical moments where number one saved me for being exactly or even worse than what happened to my father.
You were able to keep it together even though you had the same background and infrastructure provided to you,
Yeah.
and thank God you
Yeah,
came out.
and
You're on the other side of that.
I'm on the other side, and I also, COVID was a massive catalyst slash gift for me personally, and I'm sure, for many other people in the world, because for the first time in my life, as an adult, I was forced to look at myself in the mirror and really start to seeing me and not being able to recognize who the hell am I
From COVID.
from COVID.
So you attribute self-growth and help
So
and awareness
much
to COVID.
To COVID, yeah.
Is that attributed to being stuck in the house with your
Of course,
family?
it all began by being stuck in the house because all of
Right.
a sudden I have nowhere to go. So now I'm home. And I'm home, but I'm not home. My wife is here, but am I with my wife? My kids are around.
You're
Am
you're
I
used to being out and about,
out
busy,
and about,
working,
yeah.
whatever.
I was used to
All of a sudden
escaping,
you're home.
I
Escaping.
have built this crazy,
Right.
sophisticated, defense mechanism from a very young age, where anytime pain even gets close, I'm escaping.
You're a ninja. You're a pain
I'm a
ninja.
Exactly. A
In
pain
and
ninja.
out, bibbity bopping around,
In and out, in and out.
dodging
in and out.
any pain,
Dodging
and
any
accessing whatever you need, whatever pleasure centers in your brain you need.
Yeah.
You'll handle that to get out of whatever trauma you've been dealing with.
On the money.
But give yourself perhaps a lot of credit, because at the end of the day, married, kids, business.
Thank God, yeah. So
Right?
many gifts to
So,
be grateful
right.
for. But even then, as I'm looking at the mirror,
That's
I can't
healthy.
find any light of any gifts that I have. And at that point, I had everything I ever imagined I would have and much more, which is also very, very, it's mind-blowing for me.
What's mind blowing?
I had everything, meaning
had
for me, COVID was supposed to be the best gift coming
Right.
from a total different direction, because I have time now to just be with all these amazing gifts that I have. I have plenty of money in the bank. I have a great business. I have amazing employees. I have three beautiful kids.
Why are you not just
I have
happy,
an amazing
chilling
wife.
at home?
Why am I not
nothing to
happy
do?
and I'm chilling at home? And that really created my first, I would say, out of a few, they call it a spiritual awakening. where I'm just, something here is wrong and off, and it can't be, and it doesn't make sense. That on one hand, I have absolutely everything, but I feel so empty inside, and it was just so powerful.
So on
And
the one hand, you have a successful business,
Yep.
great wife, kids, you got food, shelter, employees running things.
Yeah.
Literally everything anybody's doing to get like life to that point where they can say, I'm happy, you have.
Correct. But
Yet-
let's go back,
Wow.
because I'm sorry, I
Right, we
apologize.
skipped.
I
You're-
drifted.
you're-
You asked me Daniel Sneaker King.
I did.
I
We need to
appreciate
get
very
back to
much
the Sneaker
term.
King. I
I'm
will
not a
say
king,
from
but
this part of the podcast, a lot of people will be like, "Whoa, what on earth is going on?" That this guy says he's got everything we all want, but he's not very happy about it. So we're gonna have to, we have to get back to Sneaker
and
King.
I'm 31 or 32 at the time, so like, yeah,
So you're semi-retired at 31 and
yeah.
cannot find
yeah.
happiness.
Yeah, just crazy.
And that is like
a beautiful
that's
gift, though, to receive
beautiful
such
gift.
a thing at a young age. I know many people who are just starting to
Right.
receive this gift at a later stage, and again, everyone has his purpose in this world. We'll talk a lot about that as well.
But very unconventional at 31, semi-retired. COVID hits.
COVID hits.
Bam.
Bam.
What is going
So
on?
let's-
Spiritual awakening
Yeah, so
from getting stuck
we're,
at home.
We're gonna pause at the spiritual awakening for
I
a second.
love pausing. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back
Let's go to Sneaker King.
to Israel.
Oh, you
10
wanna go to
years
Israel.
old, 15 I drop out. From 15, the drive, the force of becoming an entrepreneur comes in, and from that point, I'm dabbling. I'm, on a Vespa doing deliveries, working 2-3 jobs, working at a cell phone store, and at the
Very
age,
typical, like Israeli immigrant
yeah,
things.
yeah, and you know what? And it's funny
Nothing
because
wrong
I
with
read
it,
about
hustling.
this over the weekend. There's always that one person in your life at that stage or point that, looking back, he's really the person who got me to believe in myself in a time where I couldn't believe in myself, and I owe him a lot of gratitude.
Who's
and
that?
thanks.
Let's call him out right
Yeah,
here.
so his
Who
name
this
is
person,
Elad.
Daniel?
Elad Swissa. He's actually from Bnei Brak as well. And our parents are friends from childhood. So we're like sort of second generational friends, where
Fun.
there's not a lot of strings attached. It's very natural. Like we grew up
From
in the house.
right, from your circumstance.
Yeah, like, and my father and his father owned the business together when they were hustling at 17, 18. They owned
Not the
first,
jail business.
No, they
Okay.
owned the first car rental company in Bnei Brak, actually. So if that means anything, so that's
big. Smart
my
people
father,
start car rental
yeah,
companies.
and his father. So when I was probably 16 years old and I couldn't last in a job more than 2-3 weeks at a time, at one point, Elad came to me and he's like, Daniel, listen, I got you, man. I'm working, I'm hustling, come hustle together with me. And we didn't have a lot of similarities at that time. He was very opposite from me in many different ways, at least of where I was holding at that point. But he kept on pushing me with healthy boundaries. And no matter how many times I screwed up and I let him down, plenty, he kept coming back with a big smile. And he's like, come, today's a new day. Let's go
Elad
ahead."
had your back.
Elad had my back, absolutely. And it was at that point
Very
we were
nice,
doing
very lucky.
delivery services, and we actually had also an interesting job at one point where we were sort of security guards for shopping wagons for supermarkets.
Security guards for shopping. Were people taking shopping
In
wagons?
Bnei
That was
Brak,
a big-
yeah.
In
So
Bnei Brak.
people don't really have cars there. They would go to the supermarket. Yes, you got to put in like 5 shekel, at least at that point of time, to get it. Maybe today it's a quarter here in the
So
U.S.
they
I don't
figured
know.
they own the shopping cart.
Correct. They would own it, and they would leave it by their building, and they needed to get them back to the supermarkets in the parking lot.
How far was this distance? What's the farthest?
It was
somebody-
probably a 3-4 mile radius where I would go with the tustus, a Vespa, and
To
on one
find
hand I would
3-4
drive, and the other
miles
hand
in
I would
Bnei
drag
Brak.
them with
People
me. Yeah.
taking shopping
Yeah.
carts
Yeah.
from to home.
Yeah, that was the
3-4
first
miles.
Yeah,
They're just-
yeah, it was a very rewarding job.
That's fun.
At one point, I would also stand in the parking lot, and if I would, notice that some woman or man is leaving and taking it, I would immediately run after him and like, Tzaddik will come, give it back. It needs to stay here.
What was their reaction? But I paid 5
No,
shekels.
but I'm gonna bring it back. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, it's staying here right now. But thankfully,
What a
most
unique
people,
problem.
yeah, it's an interesting problem.
Today they have shopping carts. The minute you go this far, it clicks a wheel.
Correct. Yeah. I'm
And
sure
it
they
knows
have it
that
already.
sets a different
there
like
as
a
well, yeah.
distance from. Anyways, whatever.
So I was in that
Not
type
to
of
digress to
industry,
shopping
and then I
carts.
was doing a lot of delivery services. Anna, Vespa, standing in the heat of Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak. Getting the, how do you call it, when the bus accelerates after the light turns green, and you get all of that black air into your face. Or maybe that's how you say
The
it.
exhaust.
The
smoke
exhaust smoke. Yeah, I remember coming home, looking in the mirror. I would have like a lot of these black
from
marks.
sitting on the Vespa behind the buses.
That's when I promised myself
The
that
soot.
I'm not doing this anymore. So I found a great job.
But you were doing it, and then you said, I can't do this.
Yeah, correct. And I said I have to find something better. I was able to land myself an amazing job at a company that does advertising, and that's when I discovered that I enjoy talking to people and maybe perhaps selling as well. And I was doing that for probably 2-3 years. I was doing amazing. At one point, I managed the division of the company that was in charge of the entire
This
Orthodox.
is a marketing company.
It was a monthly magazine insert in Israel's biggest newspapers, and it was called in Hebrew Hakupon Shel Hamdina, which means the coupon of the country. So it was a coupon book when coupons were very hot in Israel. So I would come, let's say, to a electric company or to a supermarket chain, and I would offer them to buy a page, but instead of just having advertising, they would have coupons. So bring in this coupon and you will get this product for 10 shekel instead of 15. So it was a very good product because at the end of the day they would see how many people actually came with these coupons.
Great
So,
data
yeah,
analytics at
exactly.
the time.
At that
You guys
point.
were really a data analytics company.
Yes, I was doing amazing. At one point that company...
Doing amazing means you were signing up many stores to buy
signing
these,
up many stores,
buy
making
your
great
inserts.
commissions. Yeah, I had a car from the company, which at that point in Israel was
What
very
was your
big.
commission structure for selling? And how did it go? They had to print a certain amount of coupons, or they had to.
No, we would
commit?
each brand would decide how exactly. We had different grids they would choose, and then our
Okay.
graphic designers, would work closely with
Cool.
them and would decide, how and what they're going to do.
And what was your circulation of the print?
Yep.
Yeah, how many people?
We were doing probably 500,000 at our prime.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
This is really nice business.
And we were just a smaller division. The main division was to the entire Israeli population. So
And
I was
you- and you
managing
were running the
we were
Orthodox.
called the Lemahadrin. So it was Israel's coupon Lemahadrin.
Just for the people, Limahadrin means that it's not just kosher, it's extra kosher. So this was extra kosher organizational marketing for these people.
Yeah.
Directly ethnic marketing to a subset of Jews in Israel, and you were in charge of that. You built up
Correct.
from dropping out of high school to running the entire Orthodox marketing division in Israel.
Yep. Elad at the time,
I
my
love
good
that.
buddy, my motivator, my
Right.
big brother, he stick to logistics and deliveries, but he opened up a small boutique delivery firm. He was doing pretty good. And we stayed in touch. I was
How's
doing
Elad
good.
doing today?
He's
Where's
doing
Elad?
amazing. We're great
Thank
friends.
God.
He's in Petach Tikva in Israel.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. He's going to be very happy to
Yeah,
see this clip.
yeah,
Thank you, Elad.
Yeah,
Because of all your motivation, we're here on the Unconventional Podcast.
there you go.
Episode 4.
So,
What a story.
to make
Okay.
that long story short, the Israeli coupon goes out of business. They were owned by a parent company that owned multiple enterprises, and they
Okay.
went sour on multiple levels. And at one point I was jobless, and I didn't even have a resume because I was 19 at that point. I was in that job for probably 2.5 years.
Right.
I was doing very well. I'm like, wow, what am I doing now?
19.
And I'm like, you know what? I have my U.S. passport at home. I'm an American citizen.
Let me go to the
thanks to
Golden
my
City.
parents. Let me chase the American dream.
Yep.
So I remember my father taking me to the airport and giving me his last smooth. He was already released, and we were, and he was very hesitant about me going. And he told me, Daniel, just promise me 2 things. Don't mess with the IRS, because in America the IRS is not in Israel. It's like the
That's
worst
not a
crime
joke,
you can
yeah.
commit. And marry a Jewish woman.
Oh, wow. So he was concerned about your religion
Yeah.
and how you were going
Yeah,
to pay your taxes.
Yeah. And it inspired me, to be honest, even though at that point I could have cared less of both of, meaning obviously I cared, but it wasn't really something that was on top of my mind. However, I do thank my father for this dearly because we're in tax season now, and I was exactly speaking to my controller yesterday. I really enjoy paying taxes because I'm so grateful to this country. I came here at 19
Right.
after my father said his goodbyes. I landed in Williamsburg. I was staying by another continuation of Elad. His name is Shia Yakubovich. He was a good friend of my father.
So there's a few
Satmar
Elads. There are a
Chassid.
few Elads in
Few
your life.
Elads in my life, yeah. So Elad, without even knowing him at that point, today they actually know each other. The
An
energy
Elad
transformed him
conference.
to the next.
That's
He
really
picks me
cool.
up from JFK.
Who introduced you to Mr. Shia?
So Shia was a good friend of my father from the
Uh-huh.
days we were living here in the U.S. and they stayed in touch. And Shia was visiting Israel a few months before I headed out to the U.S.
Are these people who were involved in your dad's issues?
No, he had other issues, but he wasn't involved in that
Shia
issue.
had issues.
Correct.
So you were sort of, it sounds almost like You were like brought up in the mafia a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. I was brought up in, yeah,
But you're
absolutely.
not. I mean, today, thank
Yeah,
God.
thank God. Yeah,
You
yeah,
and that was part of what we were originally talking about
yeah,
is that you could have ended up on a very different path.
yeah, yeah. My therapist tells me every time she sees me, she's like, Daniel, you're a freaking miracle that you're alive. Like, look at yourself in the mirror and thank
Wow.
yourself because you are supposed to be a long time already not in this world, and she's so damn right. But yeah, so he picks
Wait,
me
wait,
up.
wait.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
we'll get to that. We stopped off at the spiritual awakening during
Well,
COVID.
we're
I
really
haven't forgotten
yes. Well,
about that.
because we paused to get back to
You want to get
sneakers.
to the sneakers,
I want to
correct?
speak about Sneaker
Yeah, yeah.
King
So Shia
and
picks
what
me up
you
from
did
the
to get
airport. I'm
that.
living in Williamsburg
Okay.
on 90 Ross Street. Ross, Ross, however you pronounce
Ross.
it. Ross, in the
Ross,
heart.
you know what's interesting? Can I just pause
Yeah,
for
sure.
a second? My great aunt and my grandma, yeah, my grandmother lived, I think, on Ross Street. They had a clothing store on Ross Street.
Oh wow, there you go.
OG Williamsburg people, immigrants also. They were immigrants.
Very
Anyways,
interesting.
Ross Street
So he's a
connection.
Satmar Chassid,
As are they.
and I'm there, and I go with him to synagogue on Shabbos. Now, I grew up in New York from 0 to 10, but I never in my life recalled being in Williamsburg, and all of a
Right,
sudden I'm
different
thinking
world.
that New York is Williamsburg, and I'm a modern Orthodox Jew between, the Satmar Chassids, which are amazing people, but I'm like, what am I doing here?
Aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I
Aliens.
can't even
Not
connect.
God forbid that they're aliens. You feel like you're in a place with
I
aliens.
felt
yeah.
completely lost. So
People
from
don't
there,
understand,
very
yeah.
quickly, I ran off to Borough Park because I had at that time
Big
two
difference.
friends, and the friend was gracious enough to allow me to become his roommate in his basement, which was a pretty nice basement at that time
Okay.
in Borough Park, and he also got me my first job because he was working at the cell phone store on 13th Avenue. I don't know if you remember it. It was called, maybe it still exists, High Tech 2000. It was in the bottom of the
I
famous
actually
hotel on
do
13th
remember.
Avenue.
I do remember a
Yeah,
store.
of Rumi
High-Tech
and Penny are
2000.
the names of the two partners.
I remember going somewhere. There was some point, and I could say I did this because I was like 18 or 19 probably at the time, maybe, and I needed extra minutes. At the time, cell phones were like in blocks of minutes. You had, do they? I don't think they still do that.
I
It
think they
wasn't
still have it.
important.
Then it was called pre-cash. I remember a lot of customers coming in.
But
I need a pre-cash.
There was
Fill
always
me
a
up, fill
guy.
me
There
up.
was a guy somewhere in Brooklyn where you would go. It was like you would pay him $250. He would take your phone and he would do something to it, and then it would become unlimited minutes.
Yeah, I remember that also.
And on your bill, you would get direct
are
from
you
Sprint.
are you referring to Chaim Levy maybe?
I wouldn't say his name because I don't know it.
Okay, he's
but
a good friend of mine. I remember
it's
he
like,
was doing
it's
that. Yeah.
20 years ago. So
Okay.
that's why I could say it because the you
Yeah.
can't I'm sure you
Yeah.
can't go after people for minutes 20 years later.
Right.
But it was legal because the bill would show up next month.
Oh.
Unlimited corporate account.
Yeah, we maybe will cut his name off the edit. I
Yeah, we
apologize.
probably edit this guy's name, Mr. So and So. But the
Okay.
point is that I would go to the store somewhere in Brooklyn, and then he would look up my bill, take my phone, give it back, unlimited minutes, and the next month's bill would be I'm on some unlimited corporate account. No idea how I got it.
Yeah.
Then a few years go by, and like everybody got a letter and said, if you use this cell phone service, this guy, we don't know how he did it, but we're taking it back. You're back to your 100 minutes or something like this. Today, they don't do that anymore. What do they do today? I don't know. But were you involved
Yeah.
in this kind of cell
No,
phone
I
world?
only lasted at that store probably for 2-3 weeks.
Oh.
I got fired. That was, I think, the first time I got fired officially. It was devastating for me at the time just because I was with my last $2,000 in my pocket, and I
It's
knew that I wanted to give the American dream a full chance, and I knew that if I'm now fired and I don't find a job quickly, I have some major issues. So, honestly, 2-3 weeks I'm looking, searching. I can't really find. In between, I'm doing a bit of car service, believe it or not. As I'm doing the
Which
car
car
service,
were you driving
they were
for?
called Maher, like fast in Hebrew.
Maher.
Yeah, he was also a nice guy, kind of an Elad guy.
Very
Gave
clever.
me a few chances.
Very
Yeah,
clever. This is
I-
another Elad.
I owe him a Kara Satov. Yeah,
Maher.
yeah. How do you say a Kara Satov in English?
You're grateful.
I'm grateful. Yeah, I guess.
You owe him
grateful.
gratitude.
I owe him gratitude.
As a matter of fact, yeah, you owe him
As I was
thanks.
driving the car service.
We can talk about that
Yeah.
for a second. I don't think that there is like an English direct translation for hakarat hatov, which means to be very gracious and have gratitude, but it's almost like if you it's like this energy. It's like if you're ever sitting in the sun, You can't describe it. You feel the rays of the sun, but you feel it. You know, you can feel the rays of
Yeah.
the sun. You're like, wow. Hakarat Hatov is like, I got your back. For like, I owe you. I will, like what we're doing here now. You're talking publicly about people who affected your life. You're not just glossing that over. You're going through your story and you're saying these people. That's Hakarat
Absolutely.
Hatov.
Yeah.
If those people called you tomorrow, you will immediately stop what you're doing and be like, "Bam, I got you."
Yeah.
Is that a good description?
1,000,000%.
So it's
yeah,
gratitude.
spot on.
It's being grateful. I think. Yeah.
It's one
Mikey,
of the
what do you-
biggest
is there a-
powers of
No?
living
Right.
in life.
Yeah.
Having
that energy.
energy of
I get very
gratitude.
excited
Very
about that.
powerful. Yeah.
Anywho,
So I was
Maher.
I was
Maher
doing
car
Maher
service.
car service, and as I was doing car service, I was actually doing a second gig. There was a credit card at that time that
Bro,
came out
this
for the
gets
Jewish
crazy.
community by a U.S. bank called Has Advantage. I don't remember if you recall
I
it.
do remember that.
So the guy managing it was also a very nice guy who I owe him a car. So his name was Danny Weiner, possibly. Weiner, Danny. We'll call him Danny. And he's like, Daniel, listen, I'm giving you now a bunch of applications. You seem like an aggressive fellow. Every application you
He
fill,
said to you,
yeah,
"Here's applications. Go."
and
fill
if they
'em."
get approved for the card, you're getting $15. I'm like, bring it on. So I'm driving car service, and as I'm taking these customers from point A
You
to
had a
point
captive
B,
audience in the
because
Maher
they were
car
all
service. Brilliant,
Jewish
dude.
people. It was a Frum car service company, a very Jewish one.
Right.
And I'm like, do you mind, signing up? And they're like, yeah, sure, pass me it. And I would pass them a pen and the application as I'm
So
driving.
I just wanted to set the table of the description because a lot of people don't know what from means or so as one of your jobs, so everybody should understand, you were driving a car service.
Yep,
And the name of the car service was Quickly
yep,
in Hebrew, Maher, quickly. And so you're driving for Maher car service, and Maher served primarily an Orthodox Jewish population. So Daniel would when he would be picking people up with Maher car service, he would also get them to quickly sign an Orthodox Jewish credit card product. So that's what the airlines do today. They make the announcement. And
absolutely.
you were very early at that game,
yeah,
and your success rate was high because everybody
Yeah.
loves credit cards.
yeah, it
And
was
Jewish
very
people,
high.
of course,
Thank
love credit
God.
cards just like everybody else.
Yeah, it gave me
Especially if you have
definitely,
points. Hoo-ah.
some extra dollars to live. At some
Wow.
point, I had to stop doing that. I actually got fired
What does that mean?
after getting multiple chances in the car service because at one point he felt that I'm responsible enough to get a morning route of taking a few different teachers to a school.
Like a fixed
Female
program.
teachers that don't drive because they're very orthodox.
Right. Like in Iran, is interestingly enough, people also don't know that. Like in Iran, people don't know this, but females in Iran cannot drive, and females in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, cannot drive.
Yeah,
Now, I am not comparing the two, God forbid, the terrible regime and wonderful people.
but terrible
But
regime
let's
is
cut
Iran.
this out of the thing. Let me just repeat that. There are places where females cannot drive cars. In an Orthodox Jewish Williamsburg population in Brooklyn, the women there also do not drive cars. They like that. They agree to that. I
Yeah.
have relatives who live within that community. It's part of their culture. They just love that. They're big fans of that.
Correct. So I began my route very early in the
So
morning.
you were going to be entrusted to drive such females around.
Correct.
They're like, oh, Daniel's a great guy, modern
Yeah,
Orthodox.
yeah.
He can handle the females.
Yeah.
Let's put him in the Maher car service. And you're like, no.
But it was a few weeks already after doing the
It's
car
comedy.
service. Yeah.
You have to turn this into something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so off we go.
2 weeks in, I probably went out one night and I didn't wake up. Chose not to wake up.
Okay.
And he exploded on me, and he had a full right to do so. And he fired me. And he told me, not only I'm firing you, I'm not paying you because we agreed that if you mess up on this, because before he gave it to me, he asked me multiple times, Daniel, you're sure you can handle this? And I told him,
This
absolutely
morning
yes.
female teacher route.
Yeah, because it's a very sensitive one. They have to be in school on time. They're teachers for students.
How did you mess that up?
I
What-
messed
what
it up. I
message
was
did you get
young
about
and
that?
I was
How old were you?
confused, 19. Yeah, so I got fired and he told me, okay, and I'm not
Yeah.
paying you. And it was probably at the last day of the month, so he was holding a big chunk. But he was a very nice gentleman and he did end up paying me a few weeks after when he calmed down. However, at that point, I'm
That's
like,
a man.
okay.
That's a
yeah,
man.
he is a man, a true
Calm
mensch.
down.
So I had to figure out, where am I going from here? Am I going back to Israel as a big loser who came to chase the American dream and is just living a boring life here? Like, I remember on Fridays, I would debate with myself if to pay $5 to buy the Israeli newspaper called Yediot Achronot. because I still was connected to Israel, but
Idiot?
$5
I don't know.
for me at that point
Very
was a lot of
mysterious.
money. So I was barely living between the rent I was paying, the lease on the car that another Elad guy named David Fishman, who's a famous car dealer from Brooklyn who knew my father, was gracious enough to
Also
give me a
part of
car.
this.
Yeah, and to tell me to pay for it when you could pay for it. And even there, at one point, I stopped paying it, and he had to take the car. One time when I was sleeping, I woke up, I call him, like, I think my car got stolen. He's like, no, I have the car. When you're serious, reach out to me again. So I'm also very
you
thankful.
didn't know there was such a thing
yeah,
called repossession.
yeah, I didn't know. That was the first time. But I'm very thankful and grateful for that lesson. David's a great guy. I really owe him a lot of akara satov as well. I owe everyone, I got to where I got through a lot of good people, and I never will forget that.
It's so good to recognize the people that get you places. It
Absolutely.
really, really is.
Yeah,
and it's so good to recognize the people that got you places, to be thankful and grateful for them. And then sometimes it's also good to make sure if you've helped somebody to get someplace, to not take it too personally if people don't recognize it the way you would perhaps recognize if somebody, you understand the concept?
yeah.
Sometimes you do things that are like really impactful in people's lives, and the feedback you get is not like in tune with what you've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the healthy thing and real part of living is to not look at life like that at all. But it's really important
Absolutely.
to make sure to be super grateful to everybody who's pushed a lever for you somewhere.
100%.
So you have multiple of those people.
I have multiple, and if you just want to go a bit in depth on this important
Let's
topic,
dive down, baby.
I actually heard this not too long ago. I'm not sure who it was from. Perhaps Elon Musk, which I love. And there's a saying that goes as following. Maybe he said it in the name of whoever said it. As follows. Yeah. That just like a rocket ship, that is one of the most powerful things that can actually go up to space. However, it only can get up to space if it has those things that hold it on the bottom that actually boost it and lift it off. However, from the second it's lifted off, those boosters become irrelevant anymore towards where you're currently going.
Right.
However, they're very much relevant at the point that without them you couldn't even, gotten to where you need to go.
Where they're necessary.
Correct. So I also have multiple people like those in my life, which I owe a tremendous amount of, respect and gratitude to. So even though we are not in touch nowadays, or they can't help me or I can't help them,
they've fallen away. But they were there when you needed them.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's just, I recently, read this, and it was very inspiring for me.
You know what's funny? I saw this also very recently.
Oh yeah?
This exact
small
booster
world. Yeah. It had like a nice
analogy.
video to it also. It had like the saying behind it, and then you saw that rocket ship and that thing lifting
gives
it up.
you that visual, and you're like, you know what? All of a sudden, my mind started racing, going, wow, there are many people like that in life, that if you become aware and present.
Speaking of, it's crazy. Last week, I'm in LA for a trade show. So I'm driving an hour from LA to Anaheim, wherever that trade show was. And an old person who was part of the lifting off calls me. I haven't spoken to him for such a long time. He was my first banker when my business still was very, very small. And he did a lot for me then, but at some point he couldn't have been helpful anymore. He came from Chase, and it's a big bank, and I had special, unique needs at the time. And he calls me to advise me that he's now in Signature Bank for quite a while.
Oh, that's, Signature Bank just went out of business yesterday, 2 days ago.
And he told me he has a pretty big
What
book.
year is that?
Last week he calls me. He tells me he's in Signature Bank. Last week.
Last week, a banker called you from Signature Bank to reconnect.
Yeah, he was part of my engines
when I needed him.
What was he selling
you from Signature Bank?
He told me, Daniel, today I specialize in e-com, and this is new to me, meaning new in my division, and you were the first person I thought about. And you know me, and I do know him, and I think he's a great person, and you trust me, which I do trust him. Do you mind giving me a fair shot? I'm like, listen, I heard about Signature from a bunch of my friends in real estate who bank, and I heard a lot of good things about them. Absolutely. I'm connecting you right now as I'm driving. Fortunately,
connect with my CFO.
I did a 3-way text with my CFO. My CFO texts me an hour later. He's like, yo, this is a great guy. Thank you. And we're going to move all the accounts to Signature.
Oh, this is so a week,
that was
2 weeks.
That was last Wednesday.
So last Wednesday, for
Thursday.
people who are watching this, 4 days ago, Signature Bank collapsed. 1 week ago, Daniel wraps up a call with his CFO saying, hey, we're going to move all of our capital to Signature because they're great people. And by the way, they are great people, and the bank did look super healthy 2 weeks ago and a week ago.
Yeah.
and 7 days ago, just not 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So you decided, let me move all my stuff to
Yeah,
Signature.
and my CFO, who I love and is amazing, his name is Yankee, been with me from the beginning. When I send him the intro and he responds back that I'm loving this, he knows that he has my full green light, and from that point on, I'm not involved unless there's maybe a signature needed. But on Friday, and I didn't even pay attention to this whole banking crisis. I was in a trade show busy, and I try not to follow
Right.
the markets anymore. We can get to that as well. And he texts me on Friday, you should know, Daniel, that God really loves us, because after my call with the signature banker, my plan was this Friday to actually go close the current accounts and transfer most of the funds over. And this obviously now happened. And God really saved our back. Now obviously I'm sure many people, or the majority of the people, are going actually to get paid, but for me cash flow is so key in my line of business. So even having these 2-3 weeks or maybe a month of turbulence could have been problematic. So just going from topic to topic.
So lucky.
Yeah, so thank God.
So wait 1 second, have you called Banker, Mr. Banker?
Honestly, I haven't called
just
him
to give him a call and be like, hey, like, bro, what the heck were you thinking? Just curious.
So I need to have a courageous conversation with him.
Yeah, I would have the call from the perspective of, if he's your buddy, professionalism, just wanting to know, like,
did you know about this?
that
right.
you guys own treasuries that are worthless and we're being now forced to liquidate them? And you were also on the phone with me asking me to move all my money into your bank? Because if so, I need an explanation, and buy me chocolates every Friday for the next 10 years, because you almost, God forbid, ruined my whole life.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how you would do that. And just important that it's a wake-up call for a lot of people who are in banking. Like, just because you're being paid money to go do something, these people have to really treat it like you can't be 2 phone calls away and you're having a balance sheet from a bank and telling everybody to move the money there. That's really what's been going on. That's scary. But what's also interesting is that I think in those bankers' minds, this wasn't going on. Like, it wasn't an issue. Who's gonna go make a run on a bank? It's 2023.
Right.
Like, what, you're gonna move all your money? Yep. Everybody did that, and then this became an issue. So very interesting happenstance, the whole banking crisis. Yeah. I followed it really, really closely because a lot of my friends. Yeah, I saw on
your Instagram feed.
Yeah, I was very busy, because I recognized a lot of people did not know what was going on. I was speaking to a lot of people and dealing with people at the time who had a lot of money at Signature, so I was hearing what was going on. And then I started getting invited and to people who were posting in real time. They were finding out. So I was like, you know what? Let me just keep a live stream going of what's happening, because I knew all my friends had shut down for the weekend. Saturday night, everybody's turning on their phones after Shabbat, and nobody knows what's flying. So I was just rapid fire posting, hey, this is what's happening in real time, and it's a big problem. And literally overnight, throughout the night, they figured it out. And now we're 5 days post, and it's still a problem. Not as big of a problem.
Wow.
I made sure quickly I have money at regional banks. So that's but you have to trust the system at some point. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
A lot of people were buying gold bars. There were people really making phone calls. Once the bank gave unlimited access, whatever, we're digressing from importance. Let's try to circle all the way back
to the sneakers.
So
We'll
get to
I'm done with
finance.
car service. I'm looking for a job, about to go back to Israel, trying to keep myself here. And I was once again introduced to a new version of Elad, a nice Israeli guy who owned a pretty big company called Relocation.com. Since then, he sold his company. He made a nice accent. Yeah. So basically, Relocation.com was selling online leads to moving companies, storage companies, realtors, anything in the logistics space, and relocation.
What job are we up to at this point? 5?
Maybe 6, 7.
6, 7.
But that was the last one.
Relocation.com was where you...
Relocation.com, 80 Broad Street, living the dream finally. I get out of the basement in Borough Park. I find myself a nice roommates to live with in Flatbush.
Flatbush,
For me, that was massive. I'm getting out of Borough Park.
You upgraded.
I'm not underground anymore. I'm on the second floor.
Oh, so you were living originally in a step down, one of those New York
basement,
style Williamsburg basements.
Yeah. So I take the subway to work every day.
L'chaim to
Cheers,
getting out of there,
l'chaim.
my brother.
Yeah.
Let's curb your enthusiasm back in to where Daniel was up to. You were at relocation.com.
Yeah. So relocation.com for me
They
was...
were providing leads to moving companies.
Yeah.
L'chaim
So
to
it
that.
was l'chaim.
L'chaim.
It
I've
was-
used moving companies, by the way. I'm a fan of the moving company
Yeah,
culture.
yeah.
I'm not against it.
Mm-hmm.
I think movers are good people.
Some
I
are
think
very
they have
good
to
people,
be
yeah.
crafty to compete, and therefore they come across as like dishonest because they'll be like, oh, you want me to move this? Yeah, no problem, 2,500. And then when it's done, you're $8,000 out. You don't know why or how, and it's they have some formula.
Yeah.
But the reality is, has there been any real innovation in the moving industry that like protects the mover? Is there now like a grid, like this much you
It's a
move that
great
much?
question, yeah.
Has
I
that
haven't
happened
really
or no?
followed
Okay,
the
but-
industry since I left it.
Interesting, but
But a year and a half in there, while I'm living the
Okay.
dream, nice base salary, commission, like 401k and health insurance. And at that point, I moved out already to my own one bedroom on Ocean Parkway.
you
So,
were really coming up.
Yeah, I was coming up, and it was amazing. It was an amazing time. And Elad, going back to my pusher number one, calls me up and tells me, Daniel, I had a horrible accident on the Vespa. He had a crazy surgery. Also miracle that he's alive. And he's like, I'm resting now in bed for 6 months. I can't really move. That's like what the doctor said. And we started talking again. And he would just call me and I would speak to him because he's in bed.
Give him good energy. Good vibes.
Try to give him good energy to the best of my ability.
Right.
And he's a hustler, a true entrepreneur. He was reading a lot and he was calling me all the time with these crazy ideas. One time he called me up, he's like, Daniel, there's a crazy job opportunity right now where we can go for a full month to be on a fishing boat in Alaska.
I thought the guy can't move.
No, meaning once he's preparing for the day after.
Got it.
And we can make $10,000 each. And we fish from morning to night. I didn't know exactly what happens, but he was like, let's do it. I'm like, I can't do it, man. I'm here. I'm starting to like live the dream, I'm finally, feeling it. Let me keep doing what I'm doing. He was very, very persistent, right? Like the movie The Founder of McDonald's, I'm actually watching it with my son now.
Great
So
movie.
so he's very much alike to him in that regards. And he kept calling me with ideas, and I always rejected them very kindly because I was just in a good place. But at one point, he called me. Not only he came up with an idea, but he also told me that he already purchased a ticket and he's coming to New York in like a week or so.
So you're already living the corporate dream.
I'm living the corporate dream. I'm
You're
actually
working at a real
davening mincha
business.
across the street at Second Source Funding. I don't know if you remember them. They were one of the first cash advance guys, and they had like a minion in the office, and they had like a kosher
I don't
food
remember
there.
them.
Yeah, so whatever.
Second
I was just in
Source
a very comfortable situation. I was part of a daily Nets minion of
Beautiful.
Rabbi Chinshul
So
and
you were praying,
on
you
Avenue
were
M.
making
Yeah,
money,
yeah,
you were living a real proud life.
yeah.
And
Very
your
proud.
buddy who can all of a sudden walk again is like, hey, I'm coming into town. I got this crazy idea.
Yeah.
I bought a ticket. See you soon. Click.
Boom. Just like that. And that really changed everything, that phone call. Because I was still rejecting because I was good and I was getting comfortable being comfortable.
Right, which is not comfortable.
Correct.
That
Which is not
doesn't-
comfortable.
Which makes me uncomfortable.
But
when
at
you
that
say
point,
but
I guess
get
I
it.
needed that after everything I was going through, and I finally, found that comfort.
Sounds like you deserved it.
Yeah,
A
I was
little
also learning a lot. My CEO was like a Harvard graduate, the guy who
Right.
ran the company for Mr. Sharon Asher, and he was teaching me a lot how to, check
Impressive.
my emails before I send them, spell check, Excel. Like I didn't know anything. I dropped out of school, right, at a young age. So I was just having the time of my life. And he shows up. I pick him up from JFK. And the idea was as follows. He's like, Daniel, I did crazy amounts of research. In Israel, branded products for men at that time we focused on. Nike, sneakers, Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, all of those names that the Israelis loved, Abercrombie and Fitch, Hollister. He's like, I checked and I saw that in the US, even if we buy it retail, it's like crazy difference.
This is called, you found an arbitrage.
Arbitrage, exactly. Retail
You
arbitrage.
you're the original sneaker arbitrage guy.
Yeah, we are the arbitrage.
Okay, so this friend from Israel figured this out reaches out to you and says, I found an arbitrage, I'm coming to Israel, I want to talk to you about it in person. I'm coming to America.
Correct.
I
Meaning
want
on
to
the
talk to you about
phone
it in
already, he's
person.
telling me, Daniel,
I got
we're
you.
doing this. You're in. Because I found the ins and outs. I know we can import it legally to Israel as long as we pay taxes and duties. But even after we do that, there's many loopholes that are technically legal. People never did it because they didn't really figure out the system. There's plenty of money to be made. Let's do it. So that idea, out of 10 different ideas he was selling me, from the fishing in Australia to maybe working at these Israeli, carts in the malls that sell skincare products.
Right.
When this woman passes by, come, give me your hand.
Yeah,
let me show
there
you.
are so many. There are so many comedy bits on
yeah.
YouTube. Anybody can look up to see these Israeli bits about Israelis who are in the mall trying to sell you some salt-based lotion. So you didn't do that. Did you ever do that job?
No. I was very
come,
comfortable.
Come. What do they do?
Come, yeah.
Your nails are no good, Come here. Let me show to you how to make pretty ones.
I love it.
So
he tells me, Daniel, listen, I'm going to figure out the logistics side of things. You have a good eye for taste. I think I got that from both my mother and father. They always appreciated, nice things.
Your parents.
Yeah. So I had an eye, I think, to a certain degree. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll come here, we'll talk. So he lands, we go. And this is one of the most beautiful miracles that ever happened, that just shows any entrepreneur out there that the day you're ready, another beautiful saying, right? There's that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street.
I mean, I don't know if I would draw anything inspiration from The Wolf
correct.
of Wall Street.
A lot of no inspiration there, aside from the fact that I work with Steve Madden today as a customer, and I think my inspiration came from that scene of the movie.
That's a different angle.
Yeah, we'll get to. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But the inspiration from The Wolf of Wall Street for me came from the following line that the wolf himself said, which was so freaking powerful, and it goes as follows.
Okay, because I have my opinion about this. Yeah,
the only thing that stops you from being successful in your life is that bullshit story that you keep telling yourself why you cannot be successful.
Yes, okay.
I remember that I had,
agree with that,
how do you
course.
say it? I had shivers.
Yeah, you had goosebumps.
I had goosebumps when I heard it.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, and I used this many times.
You had the first time, and who did you hear say that the first time?
I heard it in the movie. I
Oh,
believe
so
that Leonardo DiCaprio said it. Yeah, from the movie, yeah.
You heard a lot of inspiration from some of these types of motivations.
Yeah.
They're real motivations, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we do tell ourselves stories about...
So how did that come into play here? He lands, I pick him up. Now, I didn't even do any due diligence or research because I was, in my mind, going to reject the idea. However, I was being a good friend, knowing he's coming to the U.S. I said, I'll give him a good time. He'll stay by me. We'll go to Prime Grill on Tuesday to have the Delmonico special, right? And whatever. But he lands and he's like, let's go. I came to work. It was like 6 p.m. He's like, stores probably don't close before 8, 9, right? He's telling me.
He's like, we're going to get inventory.
I'm like, Elad, are you serious? I just finished a long day of work. You're here. Let's just go to the city, have a good time. He's like, no, we'll do that when we're done. I'm like, okay. So I'm living in Flatbush at the time. I take the train to work from McDonald Avenue and Avenue N, the F train. And across the street over there on McDonald and Avenue Pier, so there used to be a famous store called American Place.
I remember American Place on McDonald's. You remember that store?
Yeah.
They sold everything.
It was like a Century 21 department stores on a much lower Madriga level, right? TJ Maxx Marshalls.
It was a lower level Century 21.
It was pretty big, but it was a one standalone store that had a lot of off-price brands.
I think like poor people shop there in a sense.
Possibly, but at that
I
time,
up,
I felt rich shopping there. When I was working,
did they have brands though?
Yeah,
I think they had some brands.
I bought a nice,
Very cheap American
I bought
Place.
a Ralph Lauren button-down shirt.
Exactly.
And I bought a nice Calvin Klein blazer.
Exactly. They had that level brand names.
Yeah, that level, mid-tier level.
But
we
Century
call it.
21 would have some like.
Yeah, I got my Canali suit for my wedding at Century 21.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you remember there was this other store? It was on like Avenue S.
Yeah, the garage.
The garage.
Yeah.
And then I feel like in the garage there was something called the basement.
He had a basement with a kitchen because he was Italian, and when sales reps used to come in, he would say, before we talk business,
let's eat.
We have a nice meal and we.
But there was a secret place called the basement.
Yeah.
Where they would keep
behind the kitchen.
$1,000 suits.
Yeah.
For my wedding, I would never ever venture into the basement. I didn't have money. if I was going to the garage, it was to find the clearance section. I would go straight to the clearance
The
section.
clearance
garage.
of the clearance.
Yes, and I would get maybe an Armani blazer for like $120 that used to be $900. I'd be like, oh, I would have to be tailored this way, you know. But for my wedding, I rolled right into the basement and I bought a nice black suit, 2-button, really cool for my wedding in the basement. And I remember being like, wow. Now nobody wears suits, so it doesn't even matter. I don't know how these stores do it
Yeah,
anymore. But that's some
COVID
those are,
nail in the coffin.
Those
for
are
suits,
some really good memories.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you were actually part of that world, I guess.
Yeah. So I got into that world from that day.
This guy Elad.
So Elad is pressuring me in a good way. I'm like, where am I going? So I'm like, you know what? Let's go to Flatbush. Anyways, that's where I live. Excuse me, I'm telling him that. And then I'm like, let's go to American Place. Because I know Mustafa, the manager there, because I shop there for myself, and I naturally love, talking to people. Even when I'm shopping, like, where are you from? What do you do?
What's happening?
I'm a curious guy, very curious. I guess it's one of the benefits of being a school dropout, that I'm lacking so much basic knowledge when it comes to academics, that as life goes on, I become very, very curious about so many different topics.
Yeah, it's a certain kind of ignorance that breeds continued success, because you don't have barriers to entry.
Yeah.
You're comfortable saying what, where, when, how, asking about. Other people are like couched in their pre-notions of education and how to behave, and you'll just be like, how is this going on? And then you're just doing it, and then you're successful at it.
Yeah.
It's just very fun.
So here comes the saying from
Mustafa.
the movie. There are entrepreneurs out there who want to really begin their journey, and they have somewhat of an idea of what they want to do, which in our case we did, right? Elad did due diligence. He came with the money. We needed to buy products, but I didn't do my part of the deal, but I had already this contact Mustafa. So we entered the store at around 8 p.m.
This is straight from
JFK, off the Belt Parkway, McDonald Avenue. And Mustafa is smiling to see me. What's up? How are you? He looks tired after a long day. I'm like, Mustafa, you're not going to believe this. This is my good friend Elad. Elad came with a lot of cash. Now, Elad doesn't know a word of English at that point.
Okay.
Rarely, barely anything. So Elad thinks that I'm a magician because he's just, witnessing what's going on, but he can't really understand the conversation. And I'm telling Mustafa, listen, he came with a lot of money. We're looking to buy branded products. Mustafa is like, sure, what do you need? I'm like, Ralph Lauren, for starters. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. He's like, you're not going to believe this. Mustafa is telling me. I just got a shipment from Bloomingdale's of all of last season's goods, of like 300 beautiful shirts. He's like, it's still in the back. I didn't even put it on display in the store. So if you're serious, I'll take you to the back. I'll show you what I have and just take it all. So I'm playing the game now. I'm playing as if I know what I want to do, how I want to do it. Elad is witnessing. I'm sensing his energy of excitement, and I'm like just going with the flow. And I'm like, Mustafa, take us to the back. We want to buy the shirts. He takes us to the back. He opens up the boxes. Now, I've been selling Ralph Lipschitz, a.k.a. Ralph Lauren. I owe you also.
People don't know Ralph Lipschitz.
Ralph Lipschitz
That's
is
Ralph Lauren's
Ralph
real
Lauren
name.
is originally Ralph Lipschitz, a nice Jew from the Bronx. By the way, his daughter, one of his daughters, is Dylan from the famous, Dylan candy shop, candy bar, whatever it's called.
I didn't know
Dylan's,
that.
yeah.
Hold on, Ralph Lauren's daughter is from
The
Dylan's
famous
candy
Dylan,
shops?
yeah.
Well, they closed the one. Very upset at Dylan's candy shops. They closed the one on Lincoln Road.
Yeah, I was there
Really
last
unhappy
week,
about that.
and my son wanted candy.
I think that's a mistake. They should have shrunk it.
Somebody should probably open up a candy store on Lincoln Road, because currently there's nothing. Like literally a week ago,
Well, the reason they
my
closed
son.
it down is because they're not making
Maybe
money.
wrong timing, but I think Lincoln Road is picking up.
Pop-ups, small pop-ups, revenue share with the landlords.
Yeah.
Pop up a candy store. By the way, I would do it with you. I love candy.
Yeah, me too.
I would love to do a candy, and you know what we would do, right? We will go find delicious kosher candy so everybody can eat from it, because we need to absolutely leverage our market, right? But it should be for everybody, but really unique, delicious, all vegan candies.
All vegan, wow.
All vegan, so everything's kosher.
Yeah.
And open up candy pop-ups, and I would do it with you. We'll go.
Okay.
I'll contact the real estate. Well, we're here in Florida. We all know. I know the people who own stuff there. I say I'd like to do a pop-up on Sundays, a candy pop-up.
That's a great idea.
Side hustle together.
Yeah.
We will go shopping. We'll start right away.
Okay. I just came back from Expo West. So many different candy brands. So we have plenty of.
I have also. I found a candy, by the way. Now that we're talking about candy, I'm not going to say what it is because I'll keep this to ourselves. But there's a candy out there. It's made in another country. It's vegan, and it is delicious. Now, because of my kosher laws, I no longer. There's so much kosher candy. I really am keeping all kosher laws, so I buy only kosher candy to the best of my abilities. That being said, I would like to take that candy and bring it in.
Okay.
So delicious. We'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to
But a
discuss
candy
this.
pop-up,
Yeah.
first of all, my kids would love it. Your kids would love it. Sunday,
Our communities, there's so much
it's
joy
an
in
attraction,
candy. Yeah.
and everybody loves candy. You buy it for Shabbos, you
Yeah.
know, for the weekend.
In
people
honor
like.
of Shabbos.
It's a very interesting point. Okay, I didn't know we both love candy. This is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay,
So
getting back.
American Place takes us to the back. He opens up the shipments of the search.
Oh,
I
wait,
was
I
saying
gotta
Ralph
pause again.
Lauren,
Ralph
Ralph
Lipschitz.
Lipschitz. Yeah, I
Ralph
owe you a lot
Lipschitz.
of gratitude and things because for 12, 13 years since I began my business, Ralph Lauren, the brand, was my number one brand. I was known to be the guy who does Ralph Lauren.
So pre-sneakers,
So I
you were
was
the
trading.
Ralph Lauren gray
I was doing
market
sneakers,
guy.
a lot of Nike sneakers, but Ralph Lauren was like my forte.
How were you able to purchase that for retail purposes and then wholesale it, and then people knew about it and it wasn't considered, like people would get arrested for reallocating market
No, so I'll tell you,
product
when it comes
other
to the world
markets,
of branding,
that's gray market illegal. How
right?
did
So
you do
illegal
that?
illegal gray market in the world of branded products is basically, imagine that there's a factory out of Italy that is manufacturing Gucci handbags for Gucci. And
Right.
you know, there's a famous saying, right? You come to a Walmart buyer as a supplier and they're granting you permission for the first time to actually work with Walmart,
Right.
which is a dream come true for any supplier. It's the biggest account you
Right.
possibly can get. But you know what the buyer at Walmart is going to tell you at that point? You're not going to make money with Walmart, but because of Walmart, you're going to make a lot of money.
Right. Yeah,
It's an old Jewish
it's a
saying,
sales pitch,
perhaps.
I'll tell
It's a
you,
sales pitch,
right.
but the idea behind it is as follows: Walmart is going to squeeze you to death.
yeah, I'll tell
However,
you.
because you're going to manufacture such high velocity volume for Walmart, you're going to be able to negotiate with the factories. And you're going to
True,
bring your
all
price
true.
down, and therefore
All
your
true.
network of your other retailers who buy from you, that's where you're going to make a lot of your money. So just to answer the question about illegal gray market, imagine that there's a guy named Johnny. He owns a factory in Italy that specializes in handbags, and his biggest customer is certain lines of Gucci handbags that they use him to manufacture on their behalf. Gucci, because they're massive, they squeeze him like they squeeze anybody else, just that's the nature of the beast. So Johnny, let's say, is not the most kosher or conventional type of fella.
So he
He's
remanufactures.
unconventional. He decides,
Well, that's-
Gucci right now gave me a PO for 1,000 bags of this SKU. Let me create another 150 units, which technically
And those-
is authentic and
right.
legitimate, but it's not, because Gucci didn't authorize those extra 150 units. So now Johnny in the gray market is reaching out to jobbers and people
Right.
and saying, I have 150 identical to this SKU that Gucci is selling for $4,000. I'll sell it to you for $399.
And they'll make it disappear.
That's illegal. You go to jail
Illegal,
for that.
gray
That's
market.
illegal gray market. The
Don't do
gray
that.
market field.
Don't deal with factories that do that.
Exactly, correct. I don't recommend it. I got offered
But what
many
you were
times. Thank
doing-
God. What I was doing was the legal, the kosher gray market, which says as follows: arbitrage. Ralph Lauren button-down shirt with the logo in Israel goes for $250 retail.
Really?
Yeah, at that time.
Right.
We changed the market for good there, but back then. In America, on a good day in a sale at an outlet store or even at a TJ Maxx Marshalls, I can pick up that shirt, let's say, for $34.99.
Yeah.
The same shirt that's being
Right.
sold for $250
Back in the day.
back in the day.
And you know what? If you got really lucky, you got a 1999 clearance sticker.
Correct.
You ever see those?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I would hustle to Marshalls
Yeah,
trying
the
to
red,
figure out
the last
when is the
call.
clearance going to be. You would try to figure out which days are they dropping off, right?
Yeah.
And then they would clear out. So you were the king of buying those kinds of shirts, and they would sell for 100x what they were selling for here.
Correct. So that's really what our niche was. We started off with Ralph Lauren. Mustafa, American Place, he opens up the shipment. I've sold Ralph Lauren for 12 years. It was the nicest shirts I've ever touched throughout the hundreds of thousands of shirts I bought throughout my career.
Right.
And it was at the cheapest price I ever paid for.
Why
That
wasn't
shows you how
Mustafa?
God, when there's
Yeah.
a will and there's conviction in what you want to do, God will start providing you with whatever is not in your hands.
Setting things up in a way that you can connect the dots going backwards, saying
Absolutely.
the fact that you knew Mustafa and the fact that this guy came to you with this idea and made you go with him to American Place. My question is on Mustafa. Why didn't Mustafa say, wait 1 second, why are you buying all these shirts from me? I'm like a wholesaler retailer. Why didn't Mustafa call, Muhammad out in Israel, his Arab-Israeli buddy, and be like, yo, it's your brother out in Brooklyn. Let me tell you something. These Israeli guys are paying me $50 a shirt.
Because that answers the same. That's part of the bullshit story people tell themselves why they cannot be successful, right? Because if I'm a retailer, a successful one, in Mustafa's case, at that time they were at their prime American Place. He was busy with his retail. Now I came at the end of the day. I caught him in a good mood.
Right.
Cash.
How many shirts did you buy that first buy?
It was probably around 300 shirts or so. I remember that all the cash that Elad brought with him was gone. Plus, I maxed out all of my credit cards at that point, which my limits were very low. I was still brand new here. I remember I had
first
Capital One with $300. Yeah.
First purchase into the branded world, you maxed out credit cards.
Maxed out every single one. I had like an Orchard Bank credit card and a Capital One. All the weird ones that approve you when you're building your credit.
When you're just starting.
Yeah.
You maxed them all out. And how many shirts did you buy with Elad?
Around between 3 to 350, I believe.
What was your net profit on that 300?
Yeah, we doubled our money in less than an hour after Elad landed back in Israel, and that's the beautiful part of the story as well. So, Elad just landed 2 hours ago. We spent all our money. So now Elad looks at me after witnessing all of this and not understanding English and thinking I'm some type of magician. He's like, now let's go have a party, have fun. We're done.
Right.
He's like, just remember that tomorrow we need to go to Borough Park to Lando's Express, which is a logistic company that specializes in small paracels between the U.S. and Israel.
Okay.
Where we can box the goods
and
ship
he
it
had
to
done
Israel.
this research, Elad.
Yeah,
he knew how to get the product.
He did all the research. Yeah, he's very good at that.
If Ralph Lauren knew that the Bloomingdale's product was going from Bloomingdale's to American Place, if Ralph Lauren knew that two guys would roll in, max out credit cards, and reroute it, legally import it into Israel and flip it for $100 a shirt, would they have stopped this and tried to do that themselves? Or did they, once they realized what's happening, they're like, okay, cool, we got our route into Israel now, God bless them?
It's a great question. It's a great topic. We can go about this for a very long time. Number one, when a brand sees stuff like this happening, which it happens all the time in every category and industry, number one, it's a compliment, because now I know I made it. In Ralph Lauren's case, they obviously know many years back. It's the biggest fashion powerhouse in the world.
Mr. Lifshitz.
Mr. Lifshitz, yeah. But they can't really stop it from happening. They obviously, they know, and they want to know, and they don't want to know. And I'll explain, right? At some point, Elad goes back to Israel. He sells the merchandise within less than 24 hours to a wholesaler in Israel. So we didn't even have to go down the retail route as of yet. The guy comes and pays cash, and Elad calls me to break the news, and I can't even believe it. Yeah, I'm back in my cubicle in the city, and he's telling me, and I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm coming back in a few weeks, and I'm raising now money, and I'm lending from friends, and I want you to do the same, because now we're not buying 300. We're going to buy 2,000, right. Yeah. So...
How did that feel? When did you realize?
I didn't realize yet. It felt good, but I was still not fully buying into it.
So you were in your cubicle saying, until you get me double my money, I don't even believe it's going on. And you're actually coming back? You injured Israeli. I think maybe something's wrong with your brain.
Yeah.
So he comes back.
And he comes back much more motivated than the time before. And I can understand it, because now momentum is in our favor. And this is also very important. Momentum is not granted, at least based on my experience.
Okay.
There are times where you position yourself to be in a great spot of momentum, and that's when you really need to go full force. Because many times, and I can say about myself, momentum was in my favor, and I said, no problem, it's in my favor today, it'll be in my favor a month from now. And things change, and then you lose out on plenty of...
You stop making moves.
Yeah.
You think, okay, I made enough moves, let me pause for a minute.
Correct.
No. When things are happening, bro, you keep making moves.
You grind, non-stop.
There's a video going around, I think it's... it's a veteran NFL player. I think it's not Warren Sapp, but it's close. I don't remember his era, his stature, if you know who he is. Really, and he has this saying, and he's giving a speech, and he says to the crowd, just because your name is not in the spotlight yet, and just because you're not up on the board yet, You got to keep making moves, because as long as you're making moves, you're making moves.
Yeah.
The minute you think I've made enough moves and I'm not up there yet, let me pause for no. So you're living this out.
Yeah.
You're living this
Yeah.
out, and
Yeah.
you decide, let me go buy more shirts with this guy.
But today it's even much more powerful when I reflect back on those days and I see how I
Right.
could have potentially, also done things differently. But again, it's all
Hang
good.
on, but that wouldn't have given you the same experience.
Correct. So he comes back full force. We come back to Mustafa. He smiles again. He says, "Yo, I regret selling it to you back then, because since then I couldn't put my hand on more deals." He thought when he sold us those shirts that tomorrow he can call Bloomingdale's and buy more of those. But he saw that it was very rare. Hence, I was saying that I sold Ralph Lauren for over 12 years. It was literally the best shipment I've ever had in
That
the best
was
price
the
point.
best shipment.
So he's like, "Go away. My boss is mad at me that I sold it to you at that price. I don't have anything. If I'll have, I'll call you." So now Elad looks at me. He's like, "Yo, I told you I'm coming. You don't have a backup plan?" I'm like, come in the car. I have, of course. And I didn't have, but I was just going with the flow once again. So we go to Jersey Gardens Outlet Mall in New Jersey.
Remember Jersey Gardens?
Jersey Gardens. And that's really when
Spent
the
a lot of time in
arbitrage
Jersey
king all
Gardens.
began. You walk in and Nike
Which shop
and
did you go to?
Adidas. So Ralph Lauren didn't have a store there at that point. I didn't even know it then. So we went to Tommy Hilfiger because there was a big demand for that at that
Tommy
point in
Hilfiger
Israel.
had their own store in Jersey Gardens?
Yes. So Jersey Gardens is an outlet mall, one out of many, right? You have Woodbury Commons,
Yeah.
you have Jackson,
But
Tinton
they
Falls.
didn't have everything, and they also had a store. I don't know if people remember this store, but there's a store that went out of business that it was called Daffy's.
Of course.
Do you remember Daffy's?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
If you remember Daffy's always had really cool fashion in
Rare
the suit
stuff.
section.
Yeah.
But I'm like a short, stocky guy. They only serviced like thin type of European people. So I'm at the cusp of being like too short to fit in, but not quite near 6 feet tall. But I would be able to get lucky, and sometimes I would get. I guess they had a model of my body shape, and you can get some really expensive European clothing there.
Yeah, they had
And I
amazing
never
stuff.
understood-
They used to have one in Lower Manhattan on Broadway. So when
But they went out of business.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you shop there? Did
Yeah.
you hit that place?
I
up
tried.
hard?
I went to Sims. Also went out of business. They used to be
Sims.
across the street. Yeah.
Sims was very sophisticated about their business. No, I felt
Century 21 also. We used to walk in and I used
Gindi
to get
family,
buggies.
Century 21?
Yeah. They were actually
Okay.
very nice to me. They gave me a discount, on a discount.
They
Meaning
knew
they
you were a
appreciated my
commercial
business
buyer.
model. Yeah. They appreciated the hustle. I had a contact in the Lower Manhattan location.
Remember that
Stefanos, his
location?
name was. He was the manager of the floor. I would call him before my arrival. Number one, he would send out an employee to sit in my car because I couldn't park there, my SUV, and I needed to load it all the time.
Dude,
Number two, I would have 4 soldiers, employees waiting with these big buggies.
you had it made.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Okay, yeah,
Amazing
okay.
times. So I
No. They had buggies. Yeah,
they had buggies, and I would go and I would tell them what I want. They would empty out, and they would contact the stockroom also, and they would bring down and put in, and they would close a register for me, and I would have like these long receipts and some crazy stuff. It was a very
What
very
was your
fun time.
average buy from? What was your
The
dollar?
time I was
amount?
already dabbling in Century 21 and places like that, my average transaction would be $50,000 on one swipe.
But because do you realize that you hacked the system, because what you did was you were shopping wholesale retail in a way that was unavailable to other people, because nobody else was ignorant enough to say, wait 1 second, I found this arbitrage. I'm not going to pretend to go buy 100 pieces and send 10 people. I'm going to call them and say, bro, I'm willing to pay this number. Give me your stock.
Yeah,
And they wholesale to you.
yeah.
Do you
They didn't really hold. It's more discounted retail is the terms we use,
your
but yeah.
But really,
yeah.
you exploited a retail loophole and supercharged.
Yeah, absolutely, full force. And yeah, it was amazing time. At
What a good
that
show.
point I left my job at relocation.com, meaning as I began the journey, I was still working there full time, and I would do the arbitrage 5:30 once I was done. So I would actually drive in the city, park across the street in a garage, pay like $40 a day. I could afford it at that point.
Right.
And right after work, I would head out to Jersey through the Holland Tunnel and start, buying.
Zipping around to all
Yeah,
these-
because I was still very comfortable being there. It was a very solid, foundation base for
What
me.
was the dollar amount that allowed you to say, I can't be lured into
It
somebody?
was less the dollar amount. It was more about momentum going in our favor. So shipment number 2 already in Israel, and left to Israel together with the shipment because it was before Pesach, Passover, which were around the corner.
That's right. Then it's an anniversary.
Somewhat
for you.
anniversary, yeah.
It's a celebration.
It's a
No wonder we're
celebration
doing
indeed,
it now.
yeah.
Pesach is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
So your second shipment when you had this
It was like 3-4 weeks before Pesach, and it was
Wow.
2,000 shirts. And I'm already going to Israel for Pesach for the first time since I moved to the U.S. almost 2 years. So I'm very excited that I can afford to go back home, be with the family. The American is coming home.
You were coming back.
I
you
was
made
coming
it.
back. I made it. I'm starting to make it. I come back, and things are not going as smooth as the first time because the same guy who came and paid cash is like, I want to pay, but I don't have cash. I need terms. Elad tells me, Daniel, are we giving terms? I'm like, absolutely not. You want to buy it? You got to pay for it now. You don't want to buy it?
These are branded goods.
Yeah. We couldn't afford. We couldn't afford even the risk of, God forbid, him bouncing a
Right.
check or I don't know what. We had already history, me and Elad in our joint ventures getting, screwed on multiple occasions. So
Where people took product and didn't pay.
yeah, so a lot of people came and really wanted it, but they were tight cash flow wise. It was before the biggest holiday season in Israel. They spent a lot of, their buying power on buying already merchandise. So me and Elad said, you know what? Let's just do it on our own. So Elad lives in Bnei Brak.
Let's do what on a Let's go retail.
Let's go retail on our own in Israel, in Bnei Brak. Elad lives in a building in Bnei Brak, in a very poor part of Bnei Brak. The older buildings in Israel have shelters on the ground level at the end of the lobby of the building if, God forbid, war, bombs, or whatnot. The newer buildings already have in each apartment a unit, a room that is already sheltered to a certain degree. But those were the old Bnei Brak buildings.
Fixed shelters that you would, God forbid, run into.
Yeah, so Elad's very creative. He calls the owner of the building. He's like,
You got that real estate,
yeah,
bro.
let me pay you. He's like, I don't mind you paying, but you have to hire a cleaning crew because nobody entered that place already for 20 years. We hire a cleaning crew, we take the place, we go, we buy some racks and whatever in downtown Tel Aviv. It's before Pesach, so all the kids of the neighborhood are off from school. It's like a yeshiva break in Israel. We pay them a few shekels, we give them backpacks and bicycles and flyers in their backpacks that have a Tommy Hilfiger, a Ralph Lauren, and a Nike logo with 50% off. And on the back side of it, this is before Waze came about, there's a map
You printed
of
a
how
map.
to get us, because we're like in the heart
What'd
of
you
Bnei
use?
Brak.
Which map printing did you use?
I think we used MapQuest.
MapQuest?
Yeah, I believe.
MapQuest
We were
it was.
catering based on the nature of the merchandise to the non-religious people because it was all colorful and not white and black for Bnei Brak.
Right.
But our retail store is in Bnei Brak.
Right. People, just for context,
Yeah.
so people who are watching and listening to this, in Bnei Brak, it's very Orthodox religious. So, and Mike is sitting right here, so you'll appreciate this. Most of the people only wear white shirts, the males. They wear white shirts
In their
and black
honor,
pants.
I came with the white shirt today.
Just look at that. In honor of Bnei Brak,
My
your
roots
humble
from
beginnings.
Bnei Brak,
Yeah.
my humble beginnings.
Daniel's humble beginnings in Bnei Brak.
Literally,
representing a
white and
shirt.
black.
White and black.
There you go.
Well, now today, this is already called nouveau riche. Like
Yeah.
people who have money,
Yeah.
dress like this, whatever. Like they're casual but dressy. So I appreciate the style. I'm a minimalist, just so you know. We'll talk about that within the net because you still have at least another hour. Everybody dresses the same way. So if you ever roll into Bnei Brak, you will see all the males are dressed exactly the same. All of them.
They call it penguins.
A penguin look, white and black. But you were selling colored shirts, so therefore the product was more geared towards non-religious people who would gasp. They would wear colored clothing because that's religious.
I wouldn't say non-religious people. Today I would say non-observant.
At that time, I mean,
I'm sorry.
it was that deep.
Yeah, no, of course it was that deep. But somebody,
at that time, if you were wearing a colored shirt, you were not religious. That was considered part of not being part of our culty religious side of Bnei Brak.
Right.
And nothing against Bnei Brak. I love and respect everything Bnei Brak has to offer.
Thursday today, Cholent. Thursday evening, Bnei Brak.
Cholent,
Wow,
look up
I missed
Cholent.
that.
It's a bean stew that Orthodox Jews enjoy evening. And let me tell you, thousands of dollars of bean stew are sold across Orthodox landscapes across the country every Thursday evening.
Yeah, definitely.
You should try it.
some
Try it,
Cholent.
Cholent.
Yeah.
Try it, Cholent.
Yeah, try it, Cholent. With the cold
Try
beer.
Cholent.
Maybe
I can assure, if you want to have a super successful business, open up a Cholent stand in every major metro market and sell a bowl of Cholent for $20.
Yeah, I have an amazing recipe, by the way, from my father, who my wife improved it even more. I'll be more than happy to share with anyone
I was
who
going to
wants
make
to
a joke, but
start.
I'm not going to
yeah.
make a joke.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm very funny.
Right.
Sometimes. So
Yeah.
I was going to make a joke where he found that recipe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, my father has a huge passion for food. He actually,
He's a foodie.
childhood memories. He would cook delicious
chef.
foods for Shabbos.
Is he a
Actually,
chef?
he's not a chef at trade, but he has.
What
a
I mean
true
is, do you have the
passion.
same passion?
Yeah, to food I do, but I have
Do
two
you?
left hands, so I can't really be
Are
in
you
the
actually
kitchen.
left-handed?
Yeah, I am. Oh, there you go. Beautiful.
You know who
L'chaim
else
for
is?
that.
My wife is left-handed.
Oh wow, wow,
None of my kids are left-handed.
interesting. None of my kids are left-handed.
I am fascinated by left-handed people.
Thank you.
I'm left-handed. That doesn't mean I'm fascinated by myself. I'm fascinated by other left-handed people because I find myself so unconventional in many ways that when I meet people who are left-handed, I'm immediately want to talk to them and interact with them.
Oh wow.
And want to, on a different, like, just to understand, like, how does left-handedness affect your life? And what do you feel makes you different when you're really around other people? Do you actually feel a little bit different? And my answer is, when I enter a room, the way I see everything that's happening in that room, I know for a fact is happening very differently than when some random right-handed person rolls into a room. I look at myself as part of a very unique group of humanity that's left-handed. I put myself on
Wow.
the pedestal of my view of humanity and life. Only very few people on earth share that attribute with me and view life in the same way I do, which means that I do not look at things the same way a right-handed person does. 0% of the time. We will never look at something the same way. There's a famous view, and I didn't mean to digress into this, but
No.
it's a topic
This is
that blows my
fascinating. I
mind.
never heard about this
Okay,
before.
well, the idea is that, let's say a bee, this is a famous viewpoint, look at it. A bee sees, let's say, its flowers in a very different reality than we see it. When we see a sunflower and a bee sees a sunflower, they see like something totally different. And Mikey, we'll pull it up later, but you'll see it's really cool. So the idea is that left-handed people approaching situations, completely different interaction with the situation, totally different approach. And the challenge of a left-handed person is, as a matter of fact, to really try at least to still fit in with the right-handed reality of things. Because the majority is right-handed. The left-handedness adds this super cool dimension to right-handedness living, but it's not accepted as a norm. So left-handed people are always a little bit, in a way, outside of the norm of humanity, in a sense. We're accepted and we're dealt with, but I look at it as a tremendous advantage. Not so the majority. The majority would probably wish left-handed people weren't like around to mess things up so much.
Wow.
But we don't mess things up. Just the opposite. We're able to add a crazy value to the dimension of reality that right-handed people are forced to suffer from. My reality is much more advanced than a right-handed person's reality. And no offense, are you right-handed, Mikey? Oh, okay. No offense to your reality. I just feel like a left-handed reality is so much more dynamic and so much more like multi-angled, like right-handed people just don't really. I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough without speaking any specific side of it down, but I see left-handed people as this like unique animal within consciousness. You know, does that?
Wow.
What do you
it's
think
very
about that?
powerful stuff.
You know what I'm saying?
I never thought about this.
You
You
have to
definitely
start
gave me
approaching
now
it.
a whole new area to think about. Up until this minute, I thought the only advantage a lefty has is in tennis, because I happen to play tennis and I love the
Same.
game. 90% of tennis players are righties, so
Right.
naturally they're used to playing righties. When you're the lefty, the 10% against the righty, your natural forehand is to their backhand, right? So Rafael Nadal, famous tennis player, lefty, especially when it comes to serving the ball. It's the slice serve, you know. Okay, we can talk plenty about tennis, I guess, a different time. So,
No, but I get it. It's
Yeah.
an advantage of yours.
Yeah.
But no. It's an advantage in life.
right, okay, good.
Because
I'm
the
gonna,
whole approach
yeah.
you can now meditate on. Wait 1 second. So I have this superpower, like figuring out how to go to Gindi family and get them to sell you $50,000 worth of retail goods at a retail discount to flip to import legally to Israel. A right-handed person can't do that.
Oh wow, okay,
Like,
there you go.
I don't think
Thank
they
you.
can do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
Very
onwards
interesting.
to sneakers.
Yeah, so onwards to
Onwards to
sneakers. So
sneakers.
we're in Bnei Brak pre-Passover, the busiest retail season of the year, and we have these kids with the backpacks and the flyers going out to the skyscrapers, which are 2-3 miles away from Bnei Brak, because Bnei Brak is very centrally located. And we give them instructions to go into the parking lots of these skyscraper office buildings, and any nice car they see. At that point, I believe it was from a Mazda and up for Israel back in
Peugeot.
those days. Peugeot, Citroen, yeah. And just put it on their
Guerrilla
windshield.
marketing campaign.
Yeah. And we set up the store in the shelter of the basement of the building. And within hours, traffic jams on the dead-end street of Bnei Brak.
Down to the bomb shelter.
Phones are ringing because people are still not understanding how to get to us, even though we put the map in the back. And we have like 2 kids giving them instructions. Where are you coming from? Oh, take a right here, left there. And we had this situation. If COVID was at that point in time, it would be considered, how do they call those areas where COVID would spread a lot? They would call it like not a
super spreader
a
area.
super spreader area. Yeah, you didn't have room to
It was
walk.
a super spreader event. It
There was
been
no fitting
cluster.
rooms.
A cluster.
People
of
were
COVID.
taking off their shirts and just trying on because everything was on hangers, on racks. We sold the first day, for Israel terms, and I'm talking about a shelter in a building the size of maybe your bathroom over there.
That's tiny.
Times 2.
Okay, tiny.
Tiny. We did revenue of like $80,000 in one day.
So your sales per square foot would have been considered
The highest in the world, maybe.
off the charts. Let's
Yeah.
do the square footage. So you were selling out of about 250 square feet,
Yeah.
300 square feet, and you did $80,000 in sales in one day
In one day.
out of 300 square feet.
Correct.
The sales per square foot would be, Mikey, 80,000 divided by 300. Excuse me, 300 divided by 80,000. Do $80,000 divided by 300 square feet. We want to figure out. There's been a lot of wine that has already been ingested here. That's what it is? No, then it's the other way around. It's much more than that. Oh, wait 1 second. It's $266 a foot? No, it should be much more than that. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
What's 300 divided by 80,000? Okay.
I'll take that.
We'll take $266 a square foot, just so you know,
Yeah.
is a very strong sales number.
Yeah.
For that day. For a
Right.
day, that
And
is,
it was a few days in a
because
row.
if you would do that, okay, the reason why I'm laughing to myself is because in my brain, as you're speaking, the real calculation is to take that number and multiply 80,000 times 365 and then divide that by 300 square feet. And then we will have our annual sales per square foot number, which would matter. The daily calculation, that's why
Yeah,
between the
confuses
cannabis
it a bit.
and the wine, I'm laughing that out to myself. If you can multiply 80,000 times 365, Mikey, and divide that by 300 square feet, we can have a sales. Yeah, is it? We're still recording?
Yeah,
Oh, fantastic. Oh, your phone's dead. Okay, we'll do that later. Anyways, your
Yeah.
sales per square foot would be probably somewhere in the range of the thousands of dollars per square foot in sale annually, right? And that would be off the chart compared to any healthy retailer does a few $100s a square foot in revenue. They're very happy.
Yeah, so it was good times. We got sold out very quickly. I flew back an emergency flight to New York to buy more merchandise
Emergency, we need
before
more goods.
Pesach even arrived. I was
Oh,
already
you
on
had
my
to
way back.
try to restock.
Yeah,
Right, wow.
yeah. It was a good problem to have.
Of course.
And that's how we got into the retail game in Israel. And I go back after Pesach. I left my job. It was a very tough choice, but it was the proper one. And I'm all day long traveling with my SUV, buying, connecting with store managers, district managers, trying to
Right.
find ways.
Bulking up on goods.
At some point, I hire an army of bulk buyers to go and buy for me because the stores started giving me some type of, resistance. They're like, listen, you came, you emptied us out already. We have a bulk buying policy. I'm getting introduced to policies all of a sudden that they don't really allow this. More in the outlet malls, in the Nike outlet malls, and in the Ralph Lauren.
Because American Place, and Gindi, those are already like family-owned private guys.
Yeah.
Now you're already getting into the regional shops.
Right, and that answers the question you asked me before, if Ralph Lauren would care if he would know about American Place, that transaction. So at the end of the day, we get blocked by these store managers, district managers, but they would also call me back in times before the end of a quarter where their sales were low and they needed to reach it, and they're like, you know what, if you come tomorrow, we'll sell to you as much as you want. So I just had to play this very delicate game
pivoting,
of, pivoting, being nice. So instead of, being mean to them or saying, what do you mean you're ruining my business, I played calm, and I'm very thankful that I had the ability to think that way clearly,
you
because otherwise I would burn bridges. But at one point when I desperately needed merchandise because the retail in Israel was scaling like crazy, because at that point already we had national coverage on the TV about me and Elat, because it was a very sexy story. Two, religious kids growing up religious. We both didn't go to the army.
Right, you both dropped out of school.
Hustling, traveling, going to the U.S.
Wait, let's talk about not going to the army. Or maybe you don't want to talk about
So in Israel, we can talk about it. So in Israel, mandatory, 18, you go to the army, unless you're in a yeshiva studying, Talmudic studies, right? I was working at that point already. My house was broken. My father was in prison. My mother wasn't really there. I was living between different, aunts and uncles. I get the letter from the draft of the army. Now I know that I have to actually respond, because Elad never responded, and he got arrested on a Friday just by getting pulled over by a police officer because he was talking on his phone while driving.
Off to the army.
But the army computers are linked with the regular police. They saw that he's a fugitive for the army, so they lock him up, they send him to the army. He was able to get out of it, but it's a very unconventional situation to be in, especially when you're already in a stage of life where you're working and you have a lot going on. Now, in addition to that, you can't really legally work on the books in Israel unless you have the army situation sorted out. Meaning, because Israel's at danger and the army is the most important aspect of the country, they built very strong systems from blocking anyone who's trying to play games and avoid the army system.
Do you feel a national duty? I feel a national
Absolutely.
duty.
If my son would come to me tomorrow and say, Abba, I want to go to the army, I'm motivating him to go. And I would go as well if I would be in a different, stage of life. I was in survival mode. I was taking care of myself, my brothers. I had a lot going on.
I want to live in a world where there isn't a need. I mean, we always need an army. Everybody needs to have an army because people are nuts. But I would like to live in a world where we're not facing that reality where we have to go.
Absolutely.
But as a Jewish person, just as a person who, comes from Africa and regions of Africa would fight for their basically ancestral lands, as an individual who feels that that's part of my culture, I guess I would feel a national responsibility, and quite frankly, I feel a national responsibility for the United States of America as well. If we had to go to war here, God forbid, for some reason, I own a bulletproof vest, I own guns, I got a bulletproof helmet with a GoPro on it, and I would go and defend Florida.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
What a beautiful state we're living in.
Yeah,
Florida.
This is a
God
beautiful
bless
state.
Florida.
God bless the state of Florida. It's a great place. Everybody's accepted here. All ethnicities, all religiosities, all different kinds of education. Florida is like, hey, everybody else is doing it wrong. We want to do it right. The weather is good. Okay, there could be, God forbid, hurricanes. Fly to other states for a few days and get right back. But or go into, shelter type situations, God forbid. We shouldn't have to. But Florida is a beautiful state. And I would protect Florida right now as much as I would feel, and I feel a national responsibility here. Beautiful. I just also pray that we're not called up for war here. We should never. But I was wondering, you do feel a national duty to the state of Israel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're a citizen of the state of Israel.
Yeah, proud citizen.
I feel a national duty to the state of Israel. I feel a dual as strong national duty to the land of America. This is truly the land of the free, and it's allowed you to get to where you are. It's allowed me to live here in Florida and to be sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
Let's make a l'chaim for America.
L'chaim
to America. Phew, what a great place to live. And I think all religious people understand that.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're
Yeah.
running low
So
on
I
time.
came,
So
I
let's
came
get
to the army. I gave them my whole true story.
You
They-
came to the army and said, "I am
Meaning-
working and I got a business. I'm supporting Israeli citizens.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom. I'm
I
out."
told them more. I told them about my father, my mother.
Oh, you went into your story.
I went into it because you have to, otherwise they wouldn't get you out. So I got an exemption, thank God, from the army. Again, for that time, it worked well for me. I don't endorse doing that. I think the army is a beautiful thing. It helps so many people in so many ways.
Protecting Israel
Not
right
only
now.
from the protection aspect,
But you
it
think from the
also
humanity point.
sharpens your brain. Like, look at all these Israelis around the world at 24, 25, entrepreneurs.
All high tech.
The army plays a big role in
All
that.
high tech.
Without a doubt.
I've been lucky enough to be business partners with IDF service members who were in intelligence, so translating in real time chatter, relaying to etc. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you two jokes, but because we're laughing about it. But these people have a real sense of, I think, organization and skill that really any veteran of any military would have. That's why veterans are so important to bring into business. And whether it's the IDF, the U.S. military, any country that has ex-military to support their military because of the job they do, but also because they have a really unique set of skills. Do you think Israelis specifically have a unique set of skills more so than other military soldiers and people in those kinds of services?
Yeah, it's a known fact, I believe, that Israeli military trains a lot of different militaries
true.
around the world. And I think the main reason for that is because being an Israeli, you're number one in survival mode 24/7.
Right.
Like, I remember growing up in Israel, and I would be 3 minutes away from a coffee shop that there was a bomb attack and
So
30
you're always
people
on
died.
alert.
You're always on alert. And when you're always on alert, I think it just changes the entire dynamics of everything. For good and for bad, right? Because it also can
For bad, there's a
avoid
lot of trauma.
a lot of trauma and a lot of not being able to be present. But we're going to get to that in a second. So we had a very sexy story. Non-religious people coming to Bnei Brak. We had very wealthy people coming in. At one point, Sherry Arison's husband, his name is Ofer Glazer, the famous Sherry Arison. She owns Bank Poalim in Israel.
She came into shop.
Carnival Cruise Line,
Wow.
Miami Heat. Yeah, so she's
Wow.
Israeli. I don't know if she lives now in America or in Israel. At that time, she lived in Israel. Her second husband, I believe, Ofer Glazer, very nice guy. He came
to shop.
He came to shop.
Ofer Glazer is in this
Now
store.
he came in upset.
Wait, is
because
that like Warren Buffett showing up to shop
correct?
in Israel?
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett shows up to your store.
Correct.
Ozer, what's his name?
Ofer Glazer.
Ofer Glazer shows
Yeah.
up to a little schnook from Brooklyn Borough Park to shop in your Bnei Brak superstore
Yeah.
of brands.
Yeah, he comes in because
you broke the
he
system.
works in a building in Tel Aviv where he got the flyer on his windshield every day, and it made him upset. And one day he forgot to remove it, and as he's driving, he's trying with his wipers to remove it, and it's just not it's not moving. So he decides to show up and to tell us that
To scream at you. He came to scream at you.
He came to give us some mussar, yeah. But he was fascinated, and he bought like 20 shirts.
Ofer comes to Warren Buffett gets a flyer on his car. He drives to scream at you about it, and he ends up saying, "You guys are awesome," and shops in your store.
Yeah, and he asked for a discount.
Is that well? He's an Israeli. What is he going to do? He
That was
handled.
amazing.
Was that a moment where you felt some sense of holy cow?
It was a moment of, which I still do until today,
okay.
is where I took out my BlackBerry at the time, I believe it
Your
was.
BlackBerry. Remember Blackberries? Okay.
And I'm like, Ofer, come here, please. Elad, come here. And I snap a selfie.
You have a picture of
I
it.
have the picture of it. And a
What
few
is
days
Ofer's
after,
net worth?
in the billions. Again, I don't know where he holds today, but back then he's
There
he's
you
married
are.
to the richest woman in Israel.
Oh, so Ofer himself isn't important. It's the women he married.
Yeah, but I think
But
he's
still, the
also
stature's there.
he's a very successful
God bless
business
him.
person. Yeah, God bless him.
What
He's
a
a very
selfie.
nice guy.
What
We
a
got to
selfie.
know him at one point. He wanted even to partner up with us, but it didn't end up working out. But the bottom line is I took that picture, and 2 days after, as we're seeing all of this madness happening, I knew there's a beautiful story to be told. And this is something I like to do until this day. I like to really share stories that can inspire and, get people inspired. I think it's very important.
So this story is crazy, crazy inspiring. Thank you for sharing. This
Thank
story
you.
here. This is
Yeah.
pretty wild.
So I call another Elad in my life. Her name is Shalevet Chazdiel. She's a very famous journalist and radio hostess in Israel.
Shalevet.
Shalevet in Hebrew, I believe, means like I'm gonna Google it soon. But yeah, Shalevet.
Shalhevet Chutiel.
Chazdiel, like Chesed Yel.
Shalevet Hazdiel.
Chazdiel,
And
exactly.
she's a journalist in Israel.
In Israel, yeah, and she has a radio show there. I knew her from my advertising.
We got to
days.
get her on the podcast. Shalhevet, you're invited to the podcast.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Why not?
And I call her, I tell her, listen, Shalevet, I'm not asking you for any favors. I have here a beautiful story that needs to be told, and it's not a story for you, respectfully, because I don't want the religious people to see it. It's not meant for them at the moment. I want you to put me in contact with the #1 journalist that can give me full exposure for the regular secular media in Israel. I tell her in a nutshell what's going on. I send her a few pictures. She hooks us up with the #1 journalist in the biggest economy newspaper in Israel. Her name is Shoshana Chen. She happens to be religious, by the way, but she is very famous in the non-religious #1 newspaper, Yediot Achronot, that while living in Borough Park, I had to think 100 times if I can pay $5 and afford it for the weekend.
Right.
She comes,
Good
and
moment
she,
to cycle back to.
and she's very cold and very business, no bribing, no overtelling. She wanted to come and experience for herself. So she came, she showed up, and she saw, and she didn't have to speak to us. She's like, I want to write a story about this.
She showed up to shop.
She showed up to shop.
And she sees what's going on.
She sees what's going on.
She sees the mixture of all religious cultures from Israel.
Yeah.
Just enjoying.
It felt like
American,
a Woodbury
right.
Commons on a Memorial Day weekend.
In
People
Bnei Brak.
coming to Bnei Brak who never entered Bnei Brak in their life to discover the first Woodbury Commons TJ Maxx Marshall style concept that didn't exist. And the timing was perfect because it was a time in Israel where people were protesting on the streets. How
Like
hard
today.
it is to make, not today, it's a bit different.
I know, but just protesting, yeah.
But back then, it was about how come husband and wife work 2 full-time jobs and we can't afford to pay our mortgage or to buy groceries or clothing or whatnot. We were the Robin Hoods that were bringing them branded products for half the price. So it was a very, very nice story to tell.
You were supporting the common man.
It was a perfect timing, speaking of momentum. She writes this article. She doesn't promise anything. I try to tell her, maybe put it on a front page or maybe this, maybe that. She's like, Daniel, please let me do what I need to do. But we were very raw. Authentic in the interview. No filters whatsoever. And she loved it, and it was a front page article on a Tuesday, which is the second to strongest day after the Sabbath. And people were going crazy. News stations called us up. They're like, we want you guys on primetime TV. And we said, sure. And then another news station calls and says, we want you on primetime TV, but only if you give us exclusive. We're like, sure. We just played the game. We told everybody, sure. And we ended up doing 3 days in a row. Yeah.
We'll give you exclusive. Oh, by the way, we'll also give you exclusive. Yeah. And you exclusive. You need exclusive. You got it. And then you were on every single station.
Yeah.
That's what you did?
Yeah. So me and Elad were at 8 p.m. primetime, telling our story, getting free advertising, which is valued in the millions. And from that point on, it became a massive institution in Israel until this day, meaning Elad owns a very successful retail chain in Israel, in multiple malls throughout the country.
Do you own a piece of that?
No, called Importer's Warehouse. And it's funny
Shout
that
out
you
to
asked.
Importer's Warehouse.
Importer's Warehouse, L'chaim. He has a
lot
nice
of
e-com
to
business
Importer's
as well.
Warehouse, really.
And he has a very successful wholesale business as well. So at that point, things started getting big. And me and Elad start having some tensions between us. I'm living here.
There's money in the bank.
There's money in the bank. And thank God we had a courageous conversation, which ended up very well. And until today, we're both very proud of.
How much money was in the bank when you said there's tension?
I think it started to touch the first million in shekels. So you're talking about.
There was $1 million shekels in the bank.
Yeah, what is that? Maybe
700, 800 grand, 700.
No,
grand?
less.
Even less?
I think so.
It's 50% of the dollar?
No, it's a shekel is I think 3.5.
So
$1 is 3.5. Yeah, a few hundred. It was a lot of money for us.
That's when you started fighting?
Yeah, we were 21-year-old kids, 20-year-old kids.
Do you feel like
not really fighting? It was more about
tension,
like
it, what to do.
Not only to spend, like who owns how much. We never had a partnership agreement.
50-50, homeboy.
Yeah, whatever.
It wasn't 50-50.
It was complicated.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Had you guys stayed together?
We're best friends today, by the way, and we ever been ever since.
Had you kept your businesses together, would you have ended up, selling a company for $2 billion?
No. So
So
what
it wasn't detrimental.
no.
It was a very healthy.
Yeah,
like, off we go.
whatever needed to happen happened.
Wow.
And what happened was as follows. We decided that I own my company in the US, which at that time I opened up a wholesale company, so legally we can transact. He owns his company in Israel fully. I own mine. We're not partners. However, he is obligated to buy all his merchandise through my wholesale
Nice.
company because we founded this together. So he's my number one customer, but I have another 50 customers in my wholesale
Right.
company at that point.
And he
at
can
the
sell
time.
other people's stuff too and combine.
It worked out beautifully. So
What
we
a-
know
what
at
a
any
good-
given moment who
Mazal,
owns who.
as
Yeah,
we say,
Mazal.
mazal.
And we're best
Baruch
friends
Hashem.
ever since, and we do other businesses together, and we have one of the most inspiring relationships that really can exist on planet Earth, and I'm very thankful and grateful. And,
Elad
and
l'chaim.
yeah, l'chaim
L'chaim
Elad,
to
this
Elad.
is for you.
L'chaim.
So I end up with my wholesale company in the US, which apparently, or believe it or not, I call it US aisle trading, because at that time I was trading goods from the US to Israel. So USIL.
USIL.
That was my
trading. Cool.
creativity level at that point. Elad's my biggest customer, but at that point already I'm starting to establish relationships with people like Elad in many other continents around the world. Switzerland and Italy and United Arab Emirates and Asia, Australia. And I build this nice wholesale company that basically what I'm doing is I have an army of 10, 12 people going to outlet malls throughout the country.
Right.
I'm
in
feeding
each
them
country.
on the BlackBerry. Here in the US, they're going to outlet malls.
Your source of goods.
I'm
is
sourcing here
concentrated
in the US and I'm shipping it overseas. So at this point, I rent a U-Haul storage spot in Brooklyn. I operate with my laptop out of there during the day, and I'm feeling like a dispatcher speaking to my bulk buying army
Right.
who are going to the
Everybody's
stores.
popping around
At
buying
the end of
stuff.
their day, they come, they unload. The following morning, I pack the boxes and I ship it out to my customers.
Beautiful.
And that business grew very, very nicely. Thank God. From there, I pivoted more. So pivoting within, for me, was very big throughout my career. I'm a big believer in that. And I think, understanding what you do, also from a bird's eye view, so you can pivot into different areas, even if it's not necessarily in the same exact area, but you're holding so much fundamental knowledge
The most success comes from being able to know when and how to pivot.
within, for myself.
For businesses,
Many
for self,
times I became
gotta be
tempted
comfortable
and I
with that.
invested and I dabbled
it.
in other worlds where I had no idea what I was doing. Again, from a global perspective, I maybe thought I did know. Speaking about that, I think my biggest, advice that I tell my kids all the time, and I would say this to anyone, and it's easier said than done, but for me, if I only had that. When you're an entrepreneur, you grow up on the streets and you figure things out on your own. Very quickly, speaking for myself, I become very confident in how my brain operates and in my decision making, because many times it really works well. However, that confidence levels takes me sometimes out of the humble area of where I need to be, and therefore I make very quick decisions in areas that I don't really know about, and that's very dangerous. And throughout my history, I know for a fact, we mentioned the banking crisis and me not following the stock markets. I thought that one day I was the best day trader ever because it was COVID and everybody was cool and they were
Everybody's
doing it.
making money.
So I learned a lot of very
Right.
tough lessons in many areas. So, just off the record, I would recommend to, anyone listening who is very good at what he knows how to do, and even if he feels that he's reaching a cap, there's always other areas within this
What they know,
territory
yeah.
of what you
Yeah.
know that you can leverage and
Can
create,
adapt.
more businesses and adapt and whatnot. Yeah.
Get us to how sneakers becomes a big part of your.
Yeah, so
Right.
Nike becomes one of my biggest brands because as my wholesale company started to grow, I became more and more creative. So I opened up multi-brand retail stores in New York so I can get direct access to brands like Nike and
Right.
Ralph Lauren and Hugo Boss and
Then you
Lacoste
could
and
move
any other
product
brand.
in
And I can
retail
move
and
product,
wholesale.
retail, wholesale, do whatever I want to do. So yeah, sneakers was a big thing and Nike is a massive thing. And Nike was really my catalyst to get me into these blue chip companies around the world who were looking to source branded product from the US. The reason they were looking to source from the US is because their biggest competitors were the distributors for Nike. And they were second to biggest and they needed it as a doorbuster.
Why wouldn't goods be cheaper from the distributors?
So in the US, the marketplace is much more different than the rest of the world. The United States is a massive market. You have a Macy's, a Bloomingdale's, a Saks, Neiman Marcus,
So much product moving
TJ
around.
Maxx,
Right.
Marshalls. You have so much product, so much different things going on. You go outside of the US where naturally everything is more expensive when it comes to branded products. The market works there different. So instead of Nike opening up their own flagship stores like they do here in the US, they partner up with the distributor in Germany or in
Right.
the
And
Netherlands.
that's a much smaller market.
And they open up their own flagship stores, meaning the distributor himself. And therefore, the distributor himself naturally is not interested in sharing the wealth with his competitors, because why would I sell Bloomingdale's
There
if
aren't
I'm
enough
Saks?
customers.
Correct. While here in the US, you walk into a Saks, you'll see Ralph Lauren in both Saks and Bloomingdale's. You'll see, brands like, I don't know, Prada or
There's
whatever.
enough market
There's
share.
enough market share.
Right.
Correct. There it's not. So the second to best in many categories in these respectful markets would contact me and say, listen, my competitor is not sharing the wealth with me. I need it because
I
my
need
customers are looking for it. Help me out.
So there were the market grew, and the guy who controlled it would say, "Not for you, homeboy."
Yeah.
And in comes Daniel saying, "I got your back."
Exactly.
So how much product were you moving into other countries? How many units of goods?
We were moving probably, I don't know, 1 million units a year
Very, very serious.
at my
sales.
peak, yeah. And then from the wholesale business, I pivoted into e-commerce because one of my biggest wholesale customers at that time, believe it or not, overpassed Elad. It was a website in the United Arab Emirates in Saudi Arabia in that whole region called souk.com, which now became Amazon.au,
really?
meaning of that
They
region.
bought it.
And they were big customers of mine, but as Amazon was in the process of buying them, they weren't sharing that information with us. And one day out of the blue, they just threw a bomb and they said, hey guys, we're now Amazon company. We know that we have $500,000 of merchandise sitting in your warehouse, but we can't release it the way we used to until now. We actually need you to open up a vendor central account, which in Amazon's terms is the portal of how you as a brand start working with them. And we need you to upload images and
So you
content.
were it became very institutional, and you were very early.
I was very
In other
early.
words, you were in a really lucky place because a company you were shipping goods to was basically integrated with Amazon.
Yeah.
And you were from, I guess we would call it, from the guinea pigs for Amazon about how to integrate people through their new system.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So I knew nothing about it.
Who handled all of that technical?
It was a very
technology
very sad time for us because in our mind we didn't even feel like we were
Right.
capable of doing it, and we needed that cash flow ASAP, and we had to become creative. I got on a flight to Dubai. I tried to convince them, work my magic, my,
Your energy.
being,
Your
my
energy.
Didn't work. Very tough people. And
In Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia people are tough. I've never dealt directly with.
I think Arabs in
Saudi
general,
Arabia.
again, there's plenty of Jewish Arabs, right?
We are all
Syrians,
from the Middle
Persians,
East,
yeah, we're all from the Middle
essentially.
East, yeah. So they're tough negotiators. I
Humanity's
give them
from-
respect, yeah.
Well, from Africa, but Mesopotamia region really was a big subject of generating humanity. I like to talk about how like the ancient Egyptians had all sorts of technologies we don't have today.
Right.
So,
So
but the point is, you were dealing with them. It was tough trying to
I
convince
had
them.
to become very creative. I hired a ton of people, and we became now gurus in Amazon because we were forced to become. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to move the product. Took us 6 months, very intense
Excuse me,
work
6 months to transition.
to transition and get that $500,000 of merchandise outside of the door. Finally got it out of the door. It's a crazy milestone and celebration because it was a massive Achilles heel daily.
To getting them product.
Yeah. And we decided that now that we've by force became somewhat experts in the Amazon world, let's open up a seller central account domestically here in the US. And let's dabble in the waters because, we have access to product, we know how to source, we know the retail arbitrage. Amazon was becoming pretty intense at that given moment. We're talking
And
around
so
7-8
you
years
got
ago.
to see that ahead of time, that Amazon was going to be something that will be integral to. At that time, you were moving branded product, then sneakers,
Yeah,
then you're international, and then you're going this platform just in the U.S. will be huge.
yeah.
Into Amazon you go.
Into Amazon you go.
Down the Amazon rabbit hole.
Down the Amazon rabbit hole. And we were fascinating because similar, to the stock market, Amazon has these fancy apps. They show you on the second how many units you're selling
It's data.
and data
Data analytics,
and
baby.
revenue. But do you know your cost of goods? Do you
Right.
know your cost of prepping?
I happen to know like I have Uncle Arnie's here.
Right?
I know my cost of goods. I know my revenue.
That's powerful. Many people
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah, of course.
I love the
I know
packaging.
to the cent what it costs us.
Sadly,
and
this can't be sold yet on Amazon.
Well, I'll tell you this: we have some investors in Uncle Arnie who are very big Amazon people, and the reason, aside from them being visionary type people who understand how cannabis beverages will replace alcohol eventually as more and more people become educated, he's a huge Amazon seller. You for sure know who he is.
Okay.
He lives over here. Let's dive back into. Let's get back into clearing through sneakers into Amazon, and you wanted to speak about a few other things.
Yeah.
And let's
Yeah,
get into it.
so souk.com turns into Amazon. They teach us the hard way all about Amazon. At that point, we feel we know a lot about Amazon. We dabble in the world. We have our sourcing capabilities. We start reselling branded products. Very quickly, we become a top Amazon seller because we're somewhat cheating because we are the source of these branded products. And it's wonderful
So the
and
brands
amazing.
became big on Amazon early because A, you were early to the platform of Amazon.
Yeah.
B, the brands that were being pushed were your brands.
They weren't my brands, but I had access to brands that were very well searched on Amazon.
And why did you have special access to those brands?
Because I had my retail stores and my sophisticated
Got it.
arbitrage skills that allowed me to get
As an
access.
Amazon seller, you were early to sourcing your goods from places that others
And I had
were
a
not.
competitive advantage
Yep.
because most sellers at that point were wholesalers or buying from wholesalers.
So you had a price advantage.
Exactly. I had also a price advantage, and I also had some analytics and data advantage through kicking off with the Amazon in the United Arab Emirates,
Saudi Arabia.
region, MENA, I believe.
Thank you, Saudi Arabians. We appreciate your efforts.
Salam alaikum.
Yeah. So,
So-
how long were you in Saudi Arabia?
No, so I was in Dubai. I met them there. I couldn't
Yeah.
go to Saudi Arabia
Right.
at that time, but Dubai I could. So yeah. So to make that long story short, 3-4 years after that, I get this spiritual awakening before COVID a bit, but this time it's in my office. Milestone after milestone, we buy a new warehouse building.
Where are you? Let's just fast forward for a second,
Yeah.
to the level of success you, thank God, attained through all your hard work, coming from really nothing in the basement in Brooklyn. Where are you right at this spiritual awakening you just referenced? You're like during COVID, a lot of things changed for you.
It was a bit
Where
before
were you?
COVID, and I was
Okay.
at my peak.
So what's your peak? Are you comfortable saying your peak?
We were doing at that point around, I don't know, maybe $20 million a
Got
year
it.
in sales
Got it.
between wholesale and Amazon.
Got it.
Yeah.
You're at 20 million.
I'm sorry,
a
we're
year.
maybe 30.
Got it. 30
Yeah.
million.
Not good with timelines and number, but 30
but
is a
30
safe
million
number.
in revenue a year,
Yeah.
and it hits you.
Small operate, meaning we had a nice operation, but
very
very
serious
intimate,
operation.
and we were very well controlled and managing amazing, employees,
Right.
which I'm so blessed to have. I think that the ability from growing on the streets and having this cat smart to me of, survival mode put me in a very good spot to be unconventional when I hired employees.
I like that.
So I didn't go after fancy resumes. I
Right.
went after hunger, after people who
Passionate, authentic
Yeah,
people.
Yeah.
Those
and
are
thank
the
God.
people that grow organizations.
Yeah. So my director of operations, his name is Yisrael. He's been with me from day one. He was my first employee. He's been with me ever since.
Yisrael, l'chaim to
L'chaim
Yisrael,
Yisrael, this one is for you because
L'chaim to
without
Yisrael,
him,
sure.
I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am
man.
today.
Yisrael
Yeah.
built
So
up that business, l'chaim.
so that was that, and
So 30 million in revenue. You have some sort of spiritual reawakening.
yeah. And I'm sick and tired of being as good as my sales yesterday because I don't really have any transparent relationships going on with my vendors. I'm buying the goods in sophisticated ways, but back to Ralph Lipschitz, Ralph Lauren, if he really knows what I'm doing with his products, would he approve it? Absolutely not. Am I going to tell him that? Absolutely not. But it's like a game that we're playing. There's times where they don't mind, they mind more. And I was just sick and tired of the Hollywood acting, gray market, arbitrage.
You're living in the
products.
shadows. You're an
I'm
alley dog broker
living
of sorts,
in the shadows.
moving 30 million of goods
Yeah.
a year.
Which can end at any given moment.
That's the instability of being an alley
The
dog. But you're making a
spiritual
lot of money,
awakening
though.
puts me in front of a drawing board.
Okay.
Took me 2 weeks.
But you're making a lot of money.
No, I'm
You're
making money,
successful.
thank God, but I'm looking now for more continuous growth because I know I'm still young. And how much longer am I going to be young and energized in a way where I can keep this whole
Right.
circus going? So I go to the drawing board, 2 weeks back and forth. I'm like, there has to be a better way. Let me find within my operation an area where I can scale with unlimited blockages and just go full force. So I go back and forth. My wholesale company, could I not really international diverting products? Reselling on Amazon the way I can really doesn't
You
really
did a
work.
real true
I
compliance
did a
review
deep
on
dive.
all of your processes.
Yeah, my
You took
retail stores, international.
you took a non B'nai Brak approach. You did
Yeah,
a really high level institutional deep dive
yeah,
into your moves and shakes of your business and said, how do we fit this into this new box of ecom?
correct. And that's how the
Okay.
Lion Group was founded.
The Lion Group. Just for people who have to know, we're going to tag, of
Yeah,
course, because the Lion Group, which is, by the way, how all of this in a sense started, is me learning really about your origination of getting into ecom. Really fascinated me, and then your psychedelic therapy
yeah.
integration
Oh
with your
wow,
business success. Got
love
me
this
like,
topic.
yeah,
Woo.
right. So
Yeah,
before we skip to
this is real.
psychedelic therapy, because
Yeah,
I know that
we'll go back to the spiritual
yes,
awakening that happened at
yes.
home during COVID.
So let's go back and skip from, because a lot of that interest has to do to me with what is sometimes it takes for people to become truly happy and successful at business
Yeah,
is a marriage of, in a sense, plant medicine, self-work, awareness, and you've got to a point now from our earlier conversation, which is you're not just at peak sales. You have an institutional organization now running, which you were touching on, but you supplanted sort of weaknesses in a sense with plant medicine. So I
yeah,
wanted to really try
yeah,
to touch on that.
absolutely. So to make that long story short,
Yeah,
back to our conversation earlier, COVID, forced to be home,
right.
so many gifts, I can't enjoy the gifts. I'm realizing something is messed up here. What the hell is going on? I start diving a bit deep, and like a trampoline, it bounces back up. Like it's not allowing me even, to go in there, which was sad for itself as well. Numbing my entire life, so much pain, trauma I went through, master numbing, always going places, doing this, that, just never wanting to deal with the core, and now I'm forced to deal with the core. I begin my journey with, therapy. My therapist highly recommends me to go to this place in California called the Hoffman process. Now, I can't really share too much about what exactly happens there because there's a huge element of surprise that happens in the Hoffman process, which is a huge part of the growth because you don't know what to expect next. So
Right.
you were 37 perfect strangers, 5 teachers, 70% of the time in one classroom altogether, 30% of the time more smaller groups.
So very, very intimate, very intimate.
7 full days from 7 a.m. until almost 9 p.m. Crazy amount of works from bashing on pillows, your patterns.
Hang on, you're getting into
burying your
stuff you might not
parents.
be able to speak about. But
No, these are
you're
things I
allowed
can speak
to?
about.
You know
Yeah,
for sure?
yeah. I know for
So
sure.
I just wanted to poke in for a second. The Hoffman process. The Hoffman process is something that's, first of all, age old and proven. It's not just some cult weirdo thing to get involved with the Hoffman process. Now, some really important people, Daniel's a very important person, obviously, but some really important people have utilized the Hoffman process to have tremendous breakthroughs in their life. And I'm talking about people who have impacted culture, people who have impacted the United States of America at many levels, both intellectually, musically, have utilized the Hoffman process. And I know that the Hoffman process, you actually sign, there's confidentialities and understandings about what you can reveal about the Hoffman process on camera. So I'm going to be treading carefully with regards to policing you so you don't get... I'm not part of the Hoffman process. I'm familiar with it, but when you went and told me you did it, I said, oh my gosh, you must speak about as much as you can about the Hoffman process. But at the same time, my motivation is to hear from you, a very successful individual, thank God, to speak about how psychedelics helped with that. But the Hoffman process, I think people are going to go.
So the Hoffman process was a true
crazy.
catalyst in my life of recovery and healing.
How did you find out about it?
And my therapist told me about it. I didn't find out about it. But once she told me, I Googled it and I saw how powerful it potentially could be. And I was very excited to go. And I'm so happy that I went. And it's a 7-day, very intense work, plus 2 days after, checking in on your own to a hotel and just unwind by yourself before going back to the world. And it was a huge catalyst for me in so many ways. They focus mainly around that we are not our patterns, and our patterns are from our parents who received it from their parents, and we usually, or become a pattern based on our parents, or we rebel against the pattern of our parents, and now we created a whole new pattern, which once again is not really who we are. So they
So,
really
so
help
are
you
you talking
explore and
about?
discover who you truly are, and forgiving your parents and understanding that what they did to you is not because they're bad people, but it's because their parents showed them what they knew, and your parents showed you what they knew, and we're here now to break the cycle,
So
which is very
there's a
powerful.
component of intergenerational trauma
Yeah,
and that's their theme,
yeah,
is breaking that down for you to understand that.
yeah.
And what are
Another
you
big
able to
theme is
do?
you gotta feel to heal.
Once before you get to feel to heal, what do you do with that new knowledge base of
So
what
that new
happens?
knowledge for me was inspiring on multiple levels. And once I got back from Hoffman, I started feeling a craving to finally, potentially, begin my first psychedelic journey. Because prior to Hoffman, I watched the famous documentary on Netflix, How to Change Your
Yes,
Mind.
great documentary.
Very inspiring, and it really touched me, and it really opened me up to a certain degree. But I'm a very paranoid, fella. I thank God drugs wasn't something that ever called upon me, and I do suffer from some type of OCD syndrome, if they call it a syndrome, but I'm just very, mindful about losing the ability to control, which is something that I'm working on. So hence, drugs really never spoke to me, and for the few times that I tried weed in my life, it was always very, a pretty dramatic experience for me personally.
It makes you let
So
go.
yeah, so me thinking of doing a psychedelic journey where I'm completely letting go, I'm like, there's no way
So
I'm doing that.
Hoffman process, you applied yourself. Your therapist
Yeah,
told you.
she told me you
as-
need to apply yourself, and you have to log on their portal and do like 8-9 hours of work prior to your arrival there. They have waiting lists. Though once you do the work, they allow you to start putting yourselves on different waiting lists, which I did. They called me within a week. They said they have an opening. I said I'm grabbing it. And post Hoffman, I felt like mushrooms is calling upon me. I called my Hoffman
You had the
teacher.
call.
I had the call. And he tells me, Daniel, you will decide at the end if you're doing this or not. And, accept the call that is coming and allow it, to stay with you and see what you really want to achieve here. And he told me, by the way, if you decide to do it, just make sure to go in with, proper intentions.
Of course, set and setting.
Intention, and that was very, very powerful. And then I started speaking to a few people, including yourself, who I knew that did this.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So 6-7 weeks ago, when we met here, we know each other for very long, but I was here at your house.
Yeah, we had a business meeting.
We had a business meeting. It was a proper business meeting. And we had this discussion, and I told you that, and that was after
we had
watching.
a psychedelic therapy discussion 6 or 7 weeks ago, prior to us sitting down. Daniel and I had just a business meeting, got together as friends who know one another to talk about business. And during that meeting, of course, as I do, I brought up psychedelics and psychedelic therapy. And what was your response?
My response was that I'm doing a lot of work now in my therapy and my healing and my recovery. And I'm reaching milestones that some take much longer to break through. Some take crazy amount of time, some quicker, sooner than later. And I really sweat to achieve this greatness of becoming who I really want to be and finding my true self. And I said that in my mind, this is like maybe a shortcut. If I'm already so heavily invested in doing it, the natural
That's
way.
right. You pushed
let me
it away.
stick to it. And you were very respectful, and you gave me your 2 cents, and it ended in a very, respectful, nice conversation.
It's my approach.
And after Hoffman, I felt that it's calling me, because with all the knowledge I received from Hoffman, I identified clearly that I still have some blockages, less than before, but I still have, that if I'm able to make breakthrough and penetrate through them, I felt that at this point of my life, it's going to be a life-changing event for me. So I speak to my teacher at Hoffman, I speak to my therapist.
Just interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Are you allowed to say what led you of the Hoffman process to being more open to psychedelic? Like you were
Absolutely.
speaking, what are you allowed to say? What in the process did you do that let something go? I guess.
In the process, I was able to fully, for the first time in my entire life, not only intellectually, which it's very easy many times to tell yourself on an intellectual level something, but it's really not applying in your life.
Right.
But Hoffman allowed me to fully, finally, forgive my parents with a true open heart. It also allowed me for the first time to start dabbling in the world of loving myself for the first time.
That's really high level
Looking
stuff.
myself in the mirror, seeing myself, and actually loving myself. And last week I was in LA and I was blessed. A good friend of mine, ours, Joel Bess,
Yep.
who
No.
I stayed by, he told me, Daniel, I'm taking you to my new best friend, Rabbi Yitzi Horowitz, who unfortunately was diagnosed with ALS out of the blue 10, 11
People
years
should
ago.
look up this story. There's a rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yitzi Horowitz. He lives in L.A. He was like a fellow who dedicated his life to God, essentially. And for some unknown reason to us mere humans, he developed ALS at a very young age. He's physically immobile.
95% paralyzed. He only can communicate through his eyes,
through
a computer.
Through one of those. Okay, and
his brain is fully functional. He hears, he sees you, but he can't even move a finger.
And he gives over classes and inspiration
He writes
to thousands.
Inspirational Torah.
So you mentioned, I was just in L.A. for...
and I texted you. I said, you gotta go see him.
You sent me his number and said, go see him. I said, I wish I would be here for longer, but I was just in for a day.
Next time, we'll go together.
Next week, I'll be
so
there.
So I go and I
see
Yitzi, and Yitzi looks at me with his eyes. And I see through his eyes the amount of inspiration he gives me by just telling me, Daniel, you have pain. A lot of us have pain. But I have the ultimate highest level of pain that can exist in this world.
This is such a frightening thing to hear, bro.
And I wake up every morning him, Rabbi Yitzi, and I find meaning in life. And a big part of my meaning is to show you that even with all the pain that you're carrying, there can be so much worse, and you have so much to be grateful and thankful for.
This is Rabbi Yitzi Horowitz.
And then repeating his Torah, he is very big about the concept of why the number one mitzvah that Jews are commanded to do, which means ve'ahavta l'reicha kamocha, which means love your fellow friend as you love yourself.
It's for everybody in the world.
Everyone
in the world. Universal.
Why do people have such a hard time doing that? We're all buddies. We all have buddies that we technically love, but we don't really love. Why?
Well,
can't we really
let's just slow down because you're going fast.
No, I'm just gonna say this because I think this is what needs to be said, and it sums it all up. If you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody. And that's really the meaning behind it. And he speaks so much about it, and since I've met him, I'm listening to all day long, and that for itself is opening a whole new world for me. But Hoffman allowed me to, for the first time, start dabbling in the world
of self-love. Which allows you to
which was a true redemption.
Is that closure
of crazy
on past.
Bondage of carrying shame and guilt and self-hate, sabotage, you name it. So I believe that was a catalyst that called me upon psychedelic journey, which I'm happy that I did. I did it in a professional setting, as much as a professional setting can be. It was a full day event, a one-on-one setting.
Of course. And your modality was psilocybin.
Psilocybin, yeah. I came in with intentions. I wanted a stronger arsenal to live a better life, a fulfilling life, a meaningful life, less chasing after externals and more chasing internal and depth and intimacy.
Post ingestion of natural plant medicine, psilocybin specifically, because that's truly what my mission is. You would say that your connection to, I guess, nature and in a way, more important, living. I'm
sitting here with beautiful plants around me for the first time. I'm actually looking at them, and it's just, I was never able to be present in my life until Hoffman. Hoffman was the first week in my life that I was able to be present. I'm saying this, and I'm sure many people can relate. And just experiencing the high of being present is a 10x higher than any external high you can chase.
Yeah, we've been sold a false narrative that the digital world and digital manner in which to transact should also mean we lose our natural reality of consciousness. And it's not true. The future is balancing, like we were talking about balancing things, balancing that world with self-love and nature. And we can talk about this plant. My wife made this.
Oh, wow. It's beautiful.
These are specific different kinds of plants that we love plants.
I started liking plants also.
See, so that's not a mistake. Once you're post psychedelics,
correct,
your attention to detail of godliness around you, which manifests itself in plants, in people, in objects, because certain objects people have elevated to godly spirit, but you're now knowledgeable enough to know that that's not true. That's not emet.
Right.
That's not the truth. The truth is that the plant is important. Is that fascinating that you feel
Very,
that?
very fascinating. And with that, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about the follows. And I apologize in advance if I'm sharing here too much information.
It's the Unconventional podcast, baby.
Unconventional podcast.
Look at the camera and do your thing.
So yeah, like 30 seconds in my journey, once it hit me and I'm there, and I'm laying down blindfolded with beautiful music, I see my parents doing what they're doing in order to bring me to the world. And I see my older
Interesting.
brother lying on the floor because he's 2 years older than me, and he's crying, he's sad, but nobody's really giving him any attention because, my parents were busy. But I see that my parents, as they're busy doing what they're doing, they have zero intimacy between them. And they're both in their own unique destructive cycles, the cycles of life, their trauma, their bondage, call it whatever you want to call it. They're not at blame. In Hoffman, they say this all the time. We are all guilty, but we are not to blame. I believe it goes that way. Does that make sense?
It could make sense. I'm not familiar with
no
that specific
problem.
passage.
Yeah. So we are all guilty. I'm sorry. Wow.
We had a lot of wine here.
Yeah,
It's
we are
good.
all
Part
guilty.
of the program.
We are all guilty, but we are not to blame. Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
We're guilty
yeah.
but not to blame.
We're guilty,
which
but not to blame.
Which would mean you got to work
Meaning
on
my
it, but let
parents
go
are
of the
not
past.
guilty for them doing what they were doing, not having intimacy, but we are all to blame. I
And
guess
they
cut
have to
this
take
off.
responsibility.
Yeah, or maybe it does
But
make
what
sense.
did
I'm
that
sorry.
visual-
But
what did
basically,
that
that
visual give you?
visual was so powerful to me because it dropped all the stories.
Right.
My parents didn't have intimacy, negative energy between them. It only makes sense that I was born into this negative energy. It's just facts.
Well, now you're able to recognize that energy is a material thing.
Of course.
It's real.
And
It's
that
very,
was my
very real.
next segment of my journey. And all of a sudden, I came to this realization, which was so beautiful, that all of my pain, the inner pain in your gut, when you wake up in the morning, you go to sleep, when a lot of stuff is weighted on your shoulders, it's all a yearning towards the positive energy, aka the light, the aura, or whatever you want to call it.
It's an aching for that.
It's an aching,
It's an
a
aching
yearning.
for that letting go to
Yeah.
manifest
Yeah.
a peace.
Yeah, and
you've
I was
accessed
able to
that.
feel all the types of feelings that I believe exist in this world. And for the first time in my life, the feelings actually came in and went out. And I wasn't, a feeling, let me escape, let me numb. No. And I was feeling, and I was leaning into it and leaning into it. And I'm
People,
like,
just people who are watching that have never been able to dip into psychedelics yet. What
Yeah.
you're describing, I know what you're talking about.
oh yeah, okay, good.
People who are watching are going to just be like blown away by what you're describing because they can't imagine what this feels like.
Okay, there
But
you
it's,
go.
it's literally an exit of a feeling that's been bottled up.
And then all of a
physically.
sudden, what Hoffman says and talks about so many times, you gotta feel to heal. Feel to heal. And I'm like, wow, I'm actually feeling. And you know what? Pain is not so scary after all. Mind-blowing. And then, of course, sequences of energy, that this entire world runs on energy. Like, Hoffman spoke about it so much, but I couldn't really grasp around it. Like, it made sense, but it didn't make sense. But now, like, all of a sudden, I'm seeing all of this actually happening. I'm seeing the plants, the winds. I get up from
Right.
my bed to go to the bathroom. I'm like shocked of the energy in the bathroom. Like, there's a huge difference of energy in a
in
bathroom
the room,
versus
in
the bedroom.
in your bed, in the
And-
synagogue, on the
yeah.
street, in the store, in your car. That's why the best energy, and the reason why we actually do this podcast outdoors. I mean, nobody does it outdoors because it's so unconventional.
Yeah.
But we're surrounded by plants and we're
It is
outside in
beautiful,
nature.
yeah.
And that's my energy, and that's like the ability to feel that changes your entire consciousness. So psychedelics had a very successful impact on everything you believe of Hoffman plus.
Hoffman, psychedelics, I was the biggest chaser in the world.
Chase.
All
Same.
freaking day long,
Yeah.
chasing money, greed, power, more success,
What kind
more
of power
success.
are we talking about?
Because power for me
Yeah,
was
power's
money,
money,
was
yeah.
bigger accounts, businesses,
100%.
whatever the case may be.
We could get into it.
Non-stop. And the spiritual awakening of COVID came to a realization that I'm 31 years old at the time. I have everything I ever wanted and beyond. And I told myself on so many multiple occasions, once I get this, then I'll be happy. Once I get that, then I'll be happy. And happiness never came. And
Happiness
more
never
of an
showed up.
emptiness started showing up instead of that, right? There's a very nice saying, I don't even know who says this, if somebody at all says it, which goes as follows. And I think this is how we were born into this world, right? I want a good education so I can get a good job,
Right.
so I can make a lot of money,
So right.
and then I'll be happy. But you know what? I've done that, been there, zero happiness.
I'll tell you
the complete
the
opposite of happiness.
it's very important
And
to release
yeah,
that message.
yeah, I think it's a very,
So at a
very
very young
powerful
age,
message.
you hit a point of success, cash in the bank, assets, toys, doing what you want, literally.
Yeah, and doing also a lot of good deeds. I'm helping
Yeah.
people. I love helping because I was helped my entire life, so I don't even
So
have.
where was the unhappiness was coming from?
How could it be that I have the most amazing wife in the world? I have 3 amazing kids, living in a nice house, nice business, amazing employees, great friends, whatever. And I'm not happy. I'm
Right.
not capable of being present. I can't just, smell, enjoy the roses, whatever they call
Right.
it. And it's a terrible feeling. And it's a
There's-
feeling that I don't really share at that point with anyone. I just go to sleep with it. I wake up with it, and it's like I don't know, a ton of blocks sitting here somewhere.
You would
in
say
this
post
area.
post psychedelics, you're very free sharing
Well,
these feelings,
I
emotions.
feel redeemed, to be completely honest. I feel redeemed. I found meaning in life. I found the beautiful thing about just being here right now, having my phone on airplane mode,
It's so great to tap that phone.
doing the work, doing what I need to do, obviously, waking up, doing my best in every aspect, and just allowing things to play out the way they need to play.
Have you found yourself getting up earlier post psychedelics?
Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely.
I'm up at 5:30 in
Just
the
so
morning.
people should know, this is a natural result of utilizing either microdosing or psychedelics. Is
I actually care
You
what
will get
enters
up
my
earlier.
body now.
Yes,
Something
you
I never
eat
thought
more
about.
natural.
I work out.
But these are
with
tools that
intentions.
the mushroom gives you and that you need to continue to utilize. It's basically like
Absolutely.
in the past you knew you wanted to build certain things, and all of a sudden you go through psychedelic therapy and you wake up the next morning and you look down at your waist and you got a tool belt with the latest tools from Home Depot, and in your brain you know exactly how to use every single tool for life.
Absolutely.
But
Integration.
nobody's going to tell what we're doing now, just so people are watching, because I know you're comfortable with this. This is integration
Correct.
for both of us.
Yep.
Integration never stops. Once you have the plant medicine inside of your blood, you continue to speak freely of these kinds of feelings and emotions, because that leads to a better person. You've ingested a natural compound, plant medicine, and you're a better person for it. Do you think this has impacted your business positively?
It impacted every aspect of my life in the most positive way that may exist. My relationships.
Love
Again, life is never going to be every day easy. And that's just the fact of the
Ups
world
and
we're living in.
downs.
There's ups and downs. But now, when there's ups, I appreciate them much more. When there's downs, I'm not running away. I'm embracing the moment,
Right.
trying to grow, to become stronger.
It's a very strong
better.
message to embrace the down.
And I understand that this is just a cycle of life, and as the ups come and as the downs come, it's all good, and you just gotta feel it. You gotta acknowledge your feelings. You gotta let your feelings try to deliver the message that they're trying to deliver, and not get stuck on them. Let them go, even if it's a feeling of high, that I had an amazing day today in the office and we closed 4 amazing deals. That's beautiful and amazing, but thank you very much. Tomorrow is a new day. What can I do today to become bigger and better and a greater person?
And
it's just
psychedelics
very
gave you that
powerful.
energy and launched that
Yeah,
within you.
yeah.
So what are you doing now, basically? How are you living your life differently?
Meditation, I
Yeah.
think, is extremely important. Integration, like you mentioned, I think is the most important aspect, because if someone enters the world of a psychedelic journey and thinks that it's some magical pill that now is going to solve, that's obviously not going to happen. You first need to be in a conscious state of mind, in my opinion, where you're ready for change and you really are doing and did everything possible to get you to your best place. And once you acknowledge and realize that there are certain blockages that are really holding you back, this will play as a master catalyst and will provide you with all the tools to break through. But from that point on, integration, you have to actually do the work. And doing
Got
the
it.
work is doing the work, is sweating, is waking up every morning and it's choosing every day more rights versus more wrongs. And that's really how I look at my day today. So I'm hungry, I go for lunch. Am I ordering now half of the menu like I did before, and then putting myself in a place where once again I'm not happy with my body or how I feel, or becoming now tired and my day just ending due to having this temptation of eating great food and my bad relationship with food? Or am I now going to make a right choice by ordering a salad and maybe also a small pastry, because again, there is an urge at times and you
Little
want it,
treat, a
and
little
no
treat.
problem, a little treat. But as long as my day
Yeah.
goes by and I have this awareness like I never had before, that it's in my power to make decisions in every given moment, and the more I choose repetitions of the right
More
lane
rights than
versus the
wrongs.
left lane. Hoffman also talks a lot about the right road and the left road, right?
Right.
The left road is the road of vicious cycles. The right road is the journey where we know is going to lead us to the happiness, the place of us being, our best spiritual self. They speak a lot about the quadrinity check of the four aspects of the man, which is the inner child, which is our emotional self, right? Our intellect, which messes around with us all the time,
Right.
and then of course our spiritual
It,
self.
it's really our ego.
Yeah, our ego, of
So a
course.
lot of I've never done, just to be clear, I've never done the Hoffman process, but a lot of what you're talking about outside what I've read about the Hoffman process, psychedelic therapy literally hands all of this information to you and implants it in your brain. I still think people should go to the Hoffman process.
Yeah, Hoffman. From
People should
I'm
go to the
I'm the
Hoffman
biggest
process.
advocate.
I
Like
just think if you don't
my
have
friends in
the
the
time or
neighborhood
caveat,
today in the hood, everybody calls me Hoffman, Mr. Hoffman.
because you know what, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
that.
nothing wrong. I
I
love
just
it.
what I would
Actually, I
do is
embrace it.
we're gonna have in R&D legally in the state of Florida a microdosing regimen. You just have to tell people you want to feel Hoffman. Here, just take one of these a day. All natural,
Beautiful.
vegan. I'm just telling you because the plant is implanting this knowledge, like transcends physical nature and just implants itself in your brain and blood. That's why we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah,
What I'm curious about is, because you're an e-commerce human, and because now you're plant medicine based e-commerce human, which can at sometimes be like a contradiction, because you're living the e-commerce life, which is all digital all the time, instant now, and you support that.
yeah,
While in the background, your subconscious now knows that that tree is unbelievable, and the way it distributes its life and communicates with its environment is unbelievable. How do you marry the two? How can you suggest for Amazon sellers maybe to be more present? How should people who are Amazon sellers, who are like, if you're an Amazon seller, and I see them in synagogue, you look over, they're looking at their phones, they're
yeah,
checking their
yeah,
latest data.
yeah.
What would you suggest maybe to Amazon sellers to sort of improve their present consciousness and to be aware of the fact that although they're making money in this, they should also be aware that it's like a life sucker in a sense. And how should we approach the digital realm of life and balance a natural realm of being present? Like how, because you're going through that struggle now.
Yeah, I'm definitely struggling in that area. I'm making progress and I have a long way to go, but I know how difficult it is. And it's actually interesting because on the way here I was Ubering and I texted you and I saw that you didn't even have that mark yet that you read it. And I've texted you already on multiple occasions and I noticed that your response rate back is not necessarily delaying things, but I see that you're not even on your phone because I just know to realize, based on the notifications. And I said to myself, you're probably where I'm heading, and
Oh,
as
thank you for
much as
the.
your phone is important and communication is one of the biggest gifts out there, and we can do so many tremendous things with it. However, there has to be a balance where I, set boundaries.
You recognized that my phone was off. I shut off my phone at certain times. I realized post psychedelics, we use these items more as tools to accomplish and help people sort of also head in that direction. And that's partially the purpose of the podcast is I'm building an audience around very interesting people. To spread knowledge and information from interesting people. This stuff is going on. 33, 34-year-old guy, hyper successful, peak of life, having a recognition of self, working on self, living a different style of life now. A lot of people are wasting 10 years between 30 and 40 getting caught up in what you figured out, right? And in general, business tips, advice, we want to create that audience.
Yeah,
But also because I have a co-investment platform where people can co-invest in certain different kinds of assets. I'm a big believer in the digital future and helping people recognize that If you want to be part of the future, you're making moves. You're making moves. So we're always inviting people here to just make moves, whatever they may be.
Beautiful.
So your moves are really inspiring and educational, I think, to a very, very wise, it's wise, but it's very applicable to a wide age group. And I feel like people who have now gone through this process and are like looking at the world differently, they have a responsibility now to just spread the information so that younger people don't have to go through 5 to 7, 10 years. It's okay. Do you now feel having this shortcut is okay?
Absolutely. Fully.
Can you say that? Do you mind saying that?
No.
Make it clear if you don't mind.
Yeah.
'Cause we touched on this before.
Anyone who is suffering out there, there's a lot of hope.
But what's their hope from? What are we talking about?
There's hope for healing, which I think everyone wants and everyone deserves. And there's just amazing tools out there that can help, solve a huge problem that so many people, today more than ever before, suffer and hold this, between guilt, shame, self-sabotage, and anything in between.
Heavy stuff. So you would close the podcast with, being a successful human can involve psychedelic therapy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's a must.
So will you come back on, because I feel like there are a lot of technical topics, both on psychedelic healing and more of your background.
Yeah.
Which, if we had more time, because you have a flight today.
Yeah.
A lot of this. So episode 4 now, Mikey, we'll make sure to cut clips of this. That episode 4 is a part 1 with Daniel.
Okay, there you go.
When are you? I think you're going to be local sometime after Pesach, because we're all going out in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
so
we'll make a nice
we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're agreeing now?
I'm
to come
agreeing.
For part 2.
Yeah, you have my commitment.
Everybody
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Daniel, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
It's part 1 only. There's so much to learn from what just happened here.
Okay.
And really, thank you for being so generous with sharing information. And we're going to continue this conversation. L'chaim. All right, one more l'chaim to close it out.
I'm empty here, and I need a
For Shabbat. Let's go. Guys, he's getting nervous, but somebody once told me, if your transportation's not nervous, don't be nervous. If the transport...
Yeah, we're playing with fire here.
No, we're not. We're going. We're hibbity-bopping out of here. It's only 10 minutes. Let's go. The luggage is no problem. Mikey, great
Thank you so much.
This is the Unconventional podcast.